across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 10, good morning. This is Mark Dolan, in for Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is poorly today. We wish her a speedy recovery. The world is not a safe place when Julia is not in full voice. But breaking this morning, and the likely next president of France has said that he and Nigel Farage can stop the boats in an Anglo-French alliance should the two men achieve power, will bring reaction. Meanwhile, as Donald Trump launches another scathing attack on the open borders-loving London Mayor Sadiq Khan, is the president right that Europe faces civilizational collapse if we don't tackle immigration? Meanwhile, as flu cases worsen, is it time to mandate masks? If they didn't work then, why would they work now? Now, my priority for the next 3 hours is to get your opinions on the radio and the telly. My number is 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. And I've got to say that this story coming from France is very significant, because the person that's likely to be the next president to replace Macron in 2 years' time is very clear that Britain and France must work together to tackle illegal immigration. What you're looking at is a scenario whereby in 3 years' time, the two men most likely to lead France and Britain, Farage and this chap who is, of course, the successor to Marine Le Pen, could reshape the boundaries of Europe. Now, this is Jordan Bardella, and he is the protege of Marine Le Pen, who quite inexplicably faces a difficult challenge to actually run for high office because of absolute legal warfare that's been, essentially, visited upon her in a very Trump-style case from the French authorities. So Marine Le Pen, if she doesn't run, it'll be Bardella. He'll be the next president of France. This is an existential crisis, I think, for Europe. And I will say that the tunnel is at its darkest before you reach the exit. And I suspect that Europe's experiment with open borders will come to an end in the next 3 or 4 years. With me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor and rock of common sense. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed. We may have to wait 2 or 3 years, but the tide is turning, is it not, on this conversation around immigration?
I think it is, and it's changing throughout Europe. You've seen the Danish Prime Minister having quite a hardline stance on immigration, and also into the Nordic countries. So I think generally everybody is looking at what their own population needs and wants, and want to be able to deal with that rather than take in every migrant that's coming over.
Yes, Meloni has been very successful in Italy. She's brought down illegal immigration by 60%, and that's while still being within the ECHR. Change is coming.
It always had to. I don't think that any country can sustain the level of migration that we've seen, the amount of people that are on the move, and the problems that brings to varying different countries. And Mette Frederiksen in Denmark has taken a really hardline stance and actually has become incredibly popular in doing so.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's it. And it's the popular will, isn't it? The public have had enough.
Absolutely. And why shouldn't we listen to them? They're the ones that put us in charge of the country. They're the ones who want their politicians to listen. So that's what we need to do.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, Claire is with me for the duration of this hour. It is 6 minutes past 10 on Talk, the home of common sense. With us in the studio now, the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Can I say you get more lean every time I see you?
Oh, I don't know about that, and I'm not looking forward to the Christmas season in that respect.
Well, I've seen a couple of those beer selfies once or twice, because you're working hard, but you're also trying to have a bit of fun as well. Listen, it's good to see you in the studio. An interesting headline there in the Daily Telegraph: Bardella, I will stop the boats. This is the likely next president of France who wants unilateral action, and change is coming, isn't it?
Well, it shows what can be done. If only we had a French government that wanted to assist us. We haven't had that for as long as this issue has persisted. Why do the French do this? Well, naked self-interest, because they want illegal migrants out of their country, not a drain on their taxpayer, not causing all this damage to their country and into our own. And I think it's also an arrogance and disdain for the UK and desire to punish us for Brexit. But yes, I've always believed that if you had leadership in France that wanted to work with us, wanted to resolve this issue, then it was easily done. And in fact, when I went to France in the summer and spent time in the camps and on the beaches, it was obvious to me that you could resolve this. You know, these are jumped up gangsters, rubber dinghies. This is not nearly as complex a challenge as you might think. So I think we should definitely have in our back pocket the potential to turn back the boats, you know, push them back into French waters, particularly if there's a willing ally in France to help us do that.
France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Europe is shifting right.
Yeah, you're seeing across Europe and in many parts of the Western world the issues that we are worried about in this country, principally out of control migration and the cost of living, whereby most people just feel hard up, as if the economy is bouncing along the bottom, wages are going nowhere, bills are rising with every passing year. Those issues affect everyone. They affect people in my constituency, in our country, and in many other countries around the world, and that is pushing people towards parties of the right, demanding change.
Most definitely. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has blasted the mayor, Sadiq Khan. He's not a fan, of course, we know that. And Donald Trump is on record as saying that Europe faces civilizational collapse if we don't tackle illegal immigration. Is he right?
Well, I've been very worried about the profound impact on our country of mass migration, both legal and illegal. And in some respects, legal migration is the bigger challenge because the numbers are just so much
It's the
larger.
elephant in the room, isn't it?
It is.
The boats, they were an unedifying spectacle and a demonstration of the failure of the authorities, but the legal figures are just mind-boggling.
Well, the scale is just so much larger. And look,
What is it? Is it 1 in 25 Brits came here in the last 4 years? Something like that?
Yeah, the number's getting worse and worse. Just a year or two ago, it was 1 in 30, and it gets more pronounced with every passing year. Look, I want to live in a country where there's a very strong sense of identity, of unity, of togetherness, where people are well integrated, frankly assimilated into our country, and that is simply impossible with the pace of immigration that we've known, not just in recent years, but actually for the whole of my adult lifetime. Tony Blair was the founding father of mass migration. We've got to unwind this. That's why I advocate, as does Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, that we have a period of net emigration, where more people are leaving the country every year than are coming in, to give people breathing space, both for the practicalities of immigration, like helping young people onto the housing ladder, access to doctors and dentists, but more importantly to me, so that the country can recover from this period and can rebuild that sense of togetherness that I want to see.
Are we in a position to come up with a figure for an appropriate level of legal immigration into the country? We know that our viewers and listeners simply want an end to the migrant crisis in the Channel. So that's 0 boats. But what about how many people should come to the country legally, would you say, annually? Are we close to being able to come up with a figure that's in the national self-interest?
Well, I have advocated for, and is the Conservative Party's policy now, net emigration.
So is that
more
net
people
zero
are leaving,
immigration?
No, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. That's the policy that I believe Nigel Farage and others have advocated. We're going further. We're saying that to give the country this sense of this breathing space, more people should be leaving every year than are coming in.
That's significant.
So it's a major change from what we've known in recent years. But it's not actually a big change from the modern history of our country. For most of the post-war period, from the Second World War until the mid-80s, we were a net emigration country. And then in the late 80s and 90s, we had more people coming in than were leaving, but not in vast numbers, tens of thousands of people. It's really when Tony Blair made the decision, I think primarily for ideological reasons, to open the doors of the country.
Which he didn't need to do.
Which he didn't need to do. Even our European neighbours chose to take a more circumspect
And this was
approach.
opening borders to Eastern Europe.
It was. And that had a big impact. And look, many of those people have integrated extremely well into our country and are valued citizens, but undoubtedly it put huge pressure on public services and housing, and it suppressed wages of British workers at the time. And then more recently, the numbers have gone up to a frankly shameful, disgraceful level, and that's got to stop. So just the one thing we're proposing, which I think is very important, is politicians have been making promises for generations, only to break them when it comes to immigration. So what needs to happen now is this cap, this level, whatever it is, needs to be set by Parliament, so that the voters know this
legally
is actually
binding,
going to happen. It's legally binding, no more broken promises.
And Another question I've got for you. What about the care homes? What about the NHS? What about those low-skilled jobs that the Brits won't do?
Well, firstly, it's not quite as simple as that, because 8 out of 10 people working in care homes are actually British citizens. So it's not as large a percentage as some people think, though undoubtedly an important one. But we've got millions of our own citizens who are out of work claiming benefits. We've got to help those people back into the workplace. And we've had terrible false economies in recent years, where instead of paying a British worker to do a tough job in a care home, an extra £1 or £2 an hour, to compete with other jobs that there might be out there working in supermarkets or cleaning or distribution centres, we've brought people in from overseas with all of their family and dependents, and that's going to cost the British taxpayer hundreds of thousands of pounds if those people stay for the rest of their lives in our country. So my view is raise the dignity of work, pay people properly, invest in British workers to get people off welfare and back into the workforce, rather than getting low-wage, low-skilled migrants from overseas into this country.
By scrapping the Rwanda plan, the Prime Minister has made things worse. The idea of smashing the gangs was a big fat political lie, in my view. He said he'd scrap Rwanda even if it worked, which is quite astonishing for an incoming Prime Minister to scrap a policy that it may even be successful. However, this originated under the Conservatives over 14 years. How can you get a political party to fix a problem over which they presided in office?
Look, I was someone who was very clear the last Conservative government failed on this. I resigned from Rishi Sunak's cabinet because I was so angry that there were people within that party, my party, who were not prepared to do what was necessary. And I knew what the answer was: detain and deport everyone who's coming here illegally, get them back home to their own countries or to safe countries like Rwanda. And to do that, you've got to leave these human rights laws like the European Convention on Human Rights that have become like a mesh that have prevented us from getting on and doing the job that the British people were expecting of us. The Conservative Party is changing. It needs to change more and persuade the British public that it's different. It's not going to make those mistakes again. Never again will we be a party that tolerates illegal migration or an open-door attitude to our borders.
And last but not least, the flu cases are increasing, very concerning. Some people are seriously in hospital with the flu, and if you're struggling today, my heart goes out to you. It's a very, very nasty strain. Should we mandate masks to quell the spread?
No, absolutely not. Look, I don't want to return to a mask mandate where, you know, clinicians or bureaucrats tell people how to live their lives. We should all use our own good judgment and common sense.
Particularly when the science is a bit flaky on them?
Well, quite. Look, I remember the scientists saying that masks didn't work, then they did work, then they were mandatory. I don't really know exactly what the science is, but I won't be wearing a mask. If I'm ill, I'll be staying at home, because of course I want to be considerate to people like the elderly and the vulnerable, but that seems to me eminently more sensible.
And that's what we always used to. That's what we always used to do.
Exactly.
You had a stinking cold, you stayed home.
Exactly.
It's not complicated, is
exactly.
it? Well, let me tell you, you've earned those mince pies over Christmas. Have a good break, and I know it's going to be a big new year for you and for your party, who do seem to have achieved some degree of momentum. So let's see how that plays out. Robert, great to have you in the studio.
Good to see you too.
Robert Jenrick is the Shadow Justice Secretary. Your reaction to what he's had to say: 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
18 minutes past 10, Mark Dolan in for the fabulous Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is feeling a little poorly today, and we wish her well. She'll be back with a vengeance next week. Robert Jenrick can say what he wants, says John. He can promise whatever he wants. He and the government will do nothing. We've had 14 years of empty promises from the Tories. It's time to give someone else a go at solving the immigration problem. La, la, la. We're no longer listening to the old entrenched parties. That's interesting. Yvonne in Solihull. Good morning, Yvonne. Thank you for listening to the show. Mark and Mr. Jenrick, this net immigration Robert talks about, after badly losing the cream of our grammar school boys in the air in the Battle of Britain, my family suffered again from the younger brothers and sons leaving for Canada and Australia. We lost the best of our British boys. Once again, in the current exodus, I've lost my only child to life in Australia. Again, the best of British boys taking his heritage and skills away. We are done for if this continues. Yvonne, you're so right. With me in the studio, former Conservative Government Minister Claire Pearsall. This is the problem. We're loving what Robert Jenrick had to say regarding emigration from the country, not immigration, which is more actually leaving than coming in, so we can reset, build enough houses, have enough roads, GP appointments, you name it, basically restock the country. But this is coming from a Conservative Party who literally created the problem in the first place.
And that was quite interesting when he was talking about having a cap on numbers. Now, we've been around this block before, and I was at the Home Office back in 2018.
Yeah, you told me about this.
And it doesn't work. When you start to put an arbitrary figure on the amount of people that you're going to have, for example, in the care sector, what happens when there is a crisis? You've got recruitment issues. You can't just put British people who are currently redundant or unemployed into care work, because you're working with really vulnerable people, you're working with the elderly. It's not always suitable. They have to go through disclosures and barring, so DBS checks. So it doesn't work. And then what you've got to do is fiddle around the figures to try and get more people in to soften up the crisis that you have. So those caps are always doomed to fail.
Well, that's the issue, and that's what I asked him about. You know, what about the care homes? What about the NHS? There is a skills gap, but the issue is at some point the upwards of 10 million people who are of working age that are not economically active are going to have to go to work.
They absolutely are, and I think they should go to work. I think everybody that can work should work. But the problem that you've got with things like the care sector is, do you want people who are literally doing it because they have to? They don't really care about it. Do you want them looking after your relatives if they don't really want to be there? Are they going to turn up every day? And I know that most people will say they need to turn up, otherwise we won't pay them. But do you want that attitude when you're looking after some pretty vulnerable people? Well,
Claire, the most important statistic that is underreported is that even if people come to this country legally, and you know, we need their labour, we need them in the NHS, we need them to pick fruit, we need them to become like office cleaners and in care homes, right? These are the folks that we're told we need, so they come in. So even if they come to work and they come here legally, they're low skilled, low wage. So what they'll do is they'll have in-work benefits, they'll be using the NHS, and they'll have kids, so they'll use the schools, they'll be using the infrastructure, they'll have subsidised housing. If a legal migrant comes to the country and lives to the age of 90, which is perfectly possible these days, the net cost to the taxpayer is £1 million. And that's someone who's allowed to be here, who works all their life. It would be cheaper for the government to subsidise the care homes and just pay 15, 16, 17 quid an hour to British indigenous people. And if you paid properly, I think people would take that job.
And that was the one thing that Robert Jenrick said, was to increase the wages and make it a much more dignified career. But I mean, I know people that do work in care settings, and they are fantastic people. I couldn't do their job, I really couldn't, but they deserve to be paid a lot more. And until we start looking at that kind of industry as something that we want people to work into, rather than we have to have them, then it isn't going to change.
Well, that's right, and it would be cheaper.
Yeah, it would
be. And Claire, love you to bits, right? We've been friends for years. You sound like the Blob. Because you're saying, a figure's great, the legal migration figures, but it doesn't work, the quotas don't work. There you are, another barrier. Because you're a Tory and you don't want change.
I've worked in it and I've seen the problems, and what happens when you come up with these problems, that you have to find a way around it. And you can either fiddle the figures, or you can look seriously at the sectors that are in need, and you have to use immigration.
But this is the wrong attitude. We have to facilitate. We need solutions here. If Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, he'll be cracking the whip with someone like you and saying, I don't want ifs and buts.
Good luck with that. That's all I can say if he wants to try and do that. As I say, I've got experience in that sector. And
well, how do we overcome this issue then? People want change.
Need to...
My viewers and listeners have had enough. We've had enough of ifs and buts and maybes.
We need to train up our own people, and that's the one thing that we don't do. We don't invest in youth employment schemes. We don't invest in people going into jobs and apprenticeships and not going off to university and racking up debt. Until we start dealing with the young people that we have, we aren't going to change this.
And don't worry, Claire, you're very unblob-like. Let's get a call. Ashley's in the capital. Good morning, Ashley. Welcome to Talk.
Good morning, Mark. Everything that's wrong with government is that there's no planning. There's no forward planning about what the needs are, what the requirements are, and what we need to get there. It's just, we need someone quickly. Let's issue some visas and get people in. So, whereas we might need to do this at the beginning, we should be giving things like nurses and carers maybe free education. So kids coming through the system should be getting, rather than them paying for their university education, which is, these are the requirements that we need. It's going to take us 5 to 10 years to get there. So in this time, we need X number of people, and that's the people we allow. They come in on a temporary basis, on temporary visas, to help facilitate that as part of the overall cost. But we never deal with the overall solution. We deal with what we need in today, not what's going to happen tomorrow. And the problem is, I know it's an awful example, but places like China, it's the same with everything in the economy, is that because they have this communist government, which I don't agree with and don't want here clearly, right, but they have a 100-year plan, right, so they can deal with absolutely everything in a longer period of time. We just seem to come in, react to things, bring in loads of people that are, for instance, either underqualified, we don't know, even from a visa point of view, someone that earns 30 grand a year comes into the country. I mean, they're going to cost us much more. They're going to bring people with them. And they're going to be a net cost just to plug a gap. So, like you were saying just now, Mark, add a couple of quid to the hour for someone that's in this country, train them and get them to work. But we don't have a plan to do that. We don't have this 5 or 10-year plan. How do we get to fill these gaps in employment that we have, the requirements that we need with the people in this country? What's it going to take to do that? And what they think is we bring cheap labour in, fill them up, but actually overall to the taxpayer, it's not cheap labour. It's very, very, very
exactly.
expensive.
It comes with a long-term price, doesn't it, Ashley? Stay with us. And Claire Pearsall, that's the thing. It was a quick fix, opening the borders to fill these gaps, but it's like sort of taking out a mortgage in the long term because of the cost of an individual. And by the way, I wish them well. I'd be doing the same. I'd want to come to the UK and work in a care home and have a better life, but that's not our job, and not when it brings with it enormous long-term liabilities to the taxpayer and to British kids that haven't even been born yet. I mean, it's like a Ponzi scheme, isn't it?
It is, and we don't issue a so-called temporary system, as Ashley has just said. A temporary visa to fix an immediate problem would be a good way to start, but unfortunately, the way the system is set up is once you allow people to be here for 4 or 5 years, they have the right then to go on to apply to remain here, and I don't think we should do that. I think that we need to rethink the visa system properly. Those temporary visas could be of use, but actually what we need to do is free up our tax system. Things like seasonal work, fruit picking you mentioned earlier. The tax system is so complicated for people in this country. If they want to go in and out of jobs, it is incredibly difficult. And also my son was looking at a seasonal job this summer. He wasn't allowed to do it because he wasn't 18. He's 17. They wouldn't take him because their insurance wouldn't allow it. Now, how ridiculous is that?
Yes, and now the workers' rights package is going to make it worse because they've scrapped 0 hours contracts and made it harder for people to employ youngsters. Ashley, you get the last word on this.
Well, I just think that there's nothing that can't be resolved. It's just about the will of it. And, you know, the residency, if someone's there for 4 years, I mean, a lot of these people that are coming over to work, especially carers and so on, a lot of people send money back home. And the purpose for them is eventually to go back home. So I don't see why a temporary visa without... I don't think any other country offers an automatic right of residency after 4 or 5 years. People coming in for a job, they will come, they'll do their job, they will go. If they do qualify at a later point, it shouldn't be an automatic right because they have been there. It just shouldn't be the case. We should have very strict criteria, like a lot of these other countries do, Australia, United States. They don't just accept that you automatically become a citizen. You can live in the States for 10 years and then say sorry, but goodbye, right? We need to use the opportunity of temporary work to help us to get to the place, workers, I should say, to where we want to be and need to be, not to then be automatically offering them a passport, which it isn't right. That's just my view, anyway.
Ashley, thank you for a brilliant call. 0344 499 1000 is our number. Kelvin has left a voice note.
I'm fed up of hearing these people saying, oh, people have got to get into work, people have got to go to work, people have got to do this, people have got to do that. The bloody joke is, this government, since it's been in, has lost us thousands of jobs. Where are people supposed to work? You know, it's all right, keep saying, oh, we're going to find them jobs. There's none there to find because they've shut them all down. And the things that are going on, they're not giving businesses opportunities to expand or other new businesses to start up. It's totally crazy. I'm just sick of hearing it all. It's all the same old rhetoric. Both parties are the same. Labour, Conservatives, the days are done. Should get out, move on, and give somebody else a chance. So reform, hurry up and get in, and let's have some common sense back into this country.
Kelvin, that was common sense personified. And Claire Pearsall, inflation is incredibly sticky at the moment, which is making life a misery for our viewers and listeners. And the old enemy of unemployment is coming back. Which we thought we'd defeated. And in a sense, we had defeated it.
We had defeated it once and it rears its ugly head. But this is always going to be the way when you've got a Labour government that comes in that doesn't understand how businesses work and doesn't understand that wealth is good. They are incredibly jealous of anybody that is successful. And
wealth creators employ people, don't they? They give them jobs so the state doesn't have to. And given the fact that we're borderline bankrupt, we can't continue to pay people as a state, and therefore we need the private sector to do it. What have we done? Clobbered the private sector.
Well, of course we have, and we've increased the minimum wage, we've increased the young person's element of the minimum wage, national insurance contributions, things like corporation tax. There's no wonder businesses are saying, do you know what, we won't set up in the UK, we'll move abroad because they can, because their business is flexible. We are just cutting our nose to spite our face.
Yeah, it's a real worry. And, you know, unemployment, I mean, that's a double whammy, isn't it? It's a huge impact on families and their disposable income. They're not working, so therefore not paying tax. And then, of course, you've got the issue that we have to fund their lifestyle until they find another job. And Kelvin's point is there is no other job. And I think that he's right to point out, actually, that it's really hard to get employment in a lot of sectors right now. And this is, I think, underreported. It is
underreported. Everybody just assumes that people will go out there, you must just look for a job and try harder, but the jobs just aren't there. And if you do find a job, you've got thousands of people lining up to apply for it at the same time. So I think that it is really, really tricky. And unless we cut that burden, that tax burden on businesses, we're not going to move that at all. It's only going to get worse.
10:31. This is Talk, the Home and Common Sense. Mark Dolan in for the Queen, Julia Hartley-Brewer. The ethnicity of all offenders should be recorded and published by police in the wake of the grooming gang scandal, according to Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. We need to know the ethnicity of offenders. Is she right? That's next.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
The ethnicity of all offenders should be recorded and published by police in the wake of the grooming gang scandal, according to Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. She said full disclosure of the ethnicity of suspects was the best way to tackle conspiracy theories, as she announced that Dame Anne Longfield, a former Children's Commissioner, would head the national inquiry into grooming gangs after months of delays. Well, do we need to know the ethnicity? Is that a critical factor? Let's get the views of a true legend. Maggie Oliver, former detective constable, Greater Manchester Police, and whistleblower on the Rochdale grooming gang scandal. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Mark.
Maggie, it's really good to see you on the show today. Is this a step in the right direction? Is the ethnicity of those alleged to have participated in the rape gangs important? Is it essential?
It's a no-brainer, Mark. And when I hear the Home Secretary saying that, as though it's a light bulb moment, that's what I find very frustrating, and it makes me really angry. The whole country knows that this is a key part of why these rape gangs have been allowed to continue for decades, because nobody has wanted to get a grip of the facts around this kind of abuse. And, you know, this has been my life for the past nearly 20 years. But in 2013, for instance, I could give you a long stream of examples. But in 2013, I wrote to the Home Office Select Committee. One of the things that was stated in there was that we needed to record ethnicity of every sex offender to find out and understand why this goes on. And they have constantly shied away from it. So when I hear a statement in the House of Commons in 2025, as though this is suddenly a new thing, it's not. It's smoke and mirrors. And the other thing I would say, which is really important in this conversation, Mark, is that we have had a national abuse inquiry that took 7 years and £200 million and hundreds, if not thousands, of victims and survivors spoken to as part of the Truth Project. The 20 recommendations that came out of that national inquiry included a mandatory recording of ethnicity. And 3 years later, we still have not had those recommendations implemented. They're sitting on a shelf in the Home Office, gathering dust. And that's why my charity, my little charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, in January, we issued action to take the government to a judicial review to try to force them to implement those recommendations before we go on to a new inquiry. And we were last week given leave to appear in the Supreme Court in February to try and force them to do that. So this is the latest in a long, long line of attempts to give survivors a voice, to bring justice for them, to bring change so that future generations of children don't suffer the same horrendous life-destroying crimes when the state turns away deliberately, knowingly, and in my opinion are guilty of gross criminal neglect on a monumental scale that actually defies belief.
And this is not focusing on race for the sake of it, or being far right, or any of those other labels, is it, Maggie? Because given the fact that such a large number of the perpetrators of these crimes that you've exposed were of Pakistani Muslim origin, and given the fact that so many of their victims were young white girls, well, then these crimes, to a considerable extent, were racially motivated.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, and I shouldn't have to qualify it, but I always say, Mark, that, you know, abuse comes in all shapes and forms. And we know that abuse happened on a pretty horrific scale in the Catholic Church, in the Church of England. What I have never seen, though, and you know, I was a police officer for 16 years, what I have never seen is child abuse covered up to this extent by the state. So in these kinds of crimes, where the perpetrators are predominantly Pakistani Muslim men, and in my experience, if they're not Pakistani Muslim, they are from Afghanistan or from Iraq or from Iran or from Muslim countries, because they have different belief systems from us. They do not value women and girls. They believe that, you know, they have a right to have sex with them for whatever reason. But if we don't get a grip of it and address it, we are in trouble. But what I was going to say, Mark, was that in the abuse in the Catholic Church and the Church of England and other forms of abuse, we see that the church covered it up. But in this kind of crime, we have had the whole state machine cover it up. We've had police turning away. We've had the social services abandoning children in their thousands. We have the CPS lodging inadequate charges. Even this week, we've had the courts trying to hide the ethnicity of those two young men who abducted and raped that child of 15. This is institutional neglect for me. And all year we've seen, we've seen this government tiptoeing around it. But I don't want this to be a party political point for me, Mark, because we actually had 14 years of Conservatives in government, and they equally turned a blind eye. So this is the latest in a long line of attempts to play down the issues around this crime. I don't think this time this is going to go away. We've got an inquiry coming. The problem is, for me, I have little faith in these inquiries, having been involved in ICSA for 7 years and seen nothing come from those recommendations. So the devil is in the detail. You know, we haven't even got terms of reference yet. I know that survivors and victims are extremely traumatized that they haven't been made aware of who was leading this inquiry until it was announced in the House of Commons. I don't trust the establishment. I don't trust politicians. But what I do have to say, because I always try and speak the truth as I see it, Baroness Casey alone has gained my trust this year. I'm reassured that she is going to be closely monitoring this. I've been told that by her team. And I hope she does, because her report in June didn't pull any punches. She did come and meet a group of 10, 12 survivors that I pulled together from all over the country. She heard them. She reflected their voices in that report. And I have no reason yet to believe that she is not going to be very firm and add her voice to this process. But for me, the jury is out. I am going to wait and see where we end up with it. And we are going to continue with our judicial review to try to bring in the 20 recommendations we already have, which includes recording ethnicity. So I think the argument could be made that if those recommendations had been implemented, maybe we wouldn't be in the mess that we are in again now.
I think you're right. Stay with us if you can, Maggie, because with me in the studio is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor. And Claire, it was the avoidance of the race issue and the fear of being called racist. It was political correctness that allowed these crimes to happen for decades.
Yeah, and that's why it's all been covered up, and there's nothing wrong with releasing the ethnicity of offenders. Surely the public has a right to know who they are. But I think Maggie is spot on when she said she's really concerned what an inquiry will actually do. We had Baroness Casey, who provided us with a set of recommendations, none of which were followed or even implemented in part. So I think that the government to set this up and think that it's doing a splendid job, I think is missing the point. And I think whoever you put in as chair is going to have criticism levelled at them. So I think that Baroness Casey still having a hand in this is a really, really good idea. But let's not pretend that this isn't going to be another report that's going to take years, another set of recommendations that the government isn't going to implement.
Reg has messaged the show, Maggie, and said, Mark, whilst you've got Maggie on, can you ask her what her thoughts were of Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, yesterday refusing to use the expression Pakistani Muslim rape gangs?
I find it quite scary, really, that we tiptoe around words when the reality is that all the children who have been raped by these gangs know full well the ethnicity and the background of these men. And what I have seen repeatedly for 15 years, Mark, is people saying, oh, well, the statistics don't show that this is the case. The statistics don't show that because they don't want to record them. So let's get the statistics. If you were to ask any police force how many thefts from motor vehicles there's been this week, or how many burglaries there were last year, they would know. Why is it? It is just this subject matter that they refuse to get to grips with. And it is because part of it, I have to say, is undoubtedly the ethnicity of these predators, these paedophiles. For me, the second part of why these children have been abandoned on such a monumental scale is because they are judged as an underclass, that those at the top of these public institutions think that these kids don't matter. And I often say, if this was Keir Starmer's daughter who had been made pregnant or raped at the age of 12, would he think it was okay to charge the abuser with conspiracy to commit sexual activity with a child? There are so many judgments that have consumed this debate. I think the final part for me is that they have considered these children unworthy, complicit in their abuse. They've been called child prostitutes, making a lifestyle choice, and the police, social services have not been prepared to put resources in to fund effective investigations around these cases because they are complex. And you can't have a police officer who's got 5 minutes in the job investigating them. So the consequences of systemic neglect over decades has led to children being failed.
And Maggie, just a couple of seconds if you can, but what's critical to point out is that these crimes are not only historic, they're ongoing, aren't they? And I spoke to a solicitor up in the Northwest who represents victims and perpetrators, because that's his job, he's a solicitor, and he told me earlier in the year that the problem is as bad as ever, if not worse.
I started my own charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, in 2019 because I was being approached repeatedly by hundreds of victims who had nowhere to go. We deal with cases today. We're not dealing with historic cases. We are picking up the pieces of the historic cases that went unaddressed by offering emotional support to survivors. But we also offer an advocacy service which fights for victims and survivors who are seeking justice today. So I'm telling everybody listening, this is not a problem of the past. And the reality is that the abusers, the rapists know full well that the chance of them being caught, prosecuted, criminalised, sent to prison or deported is virtually non-existent, and the risk is worth taking. So as a country, we have failed generations of children. The announcement yesterday for me is the first step. Let's see where we get to with it. But you know what? I'm not going away from this. This judicial review for me is probably more important than this inquiry at this point, because we are still going to be 3 years away from any kind of recommendations with this inquiry, even if it does get off the ground and survivors and victims have a substantial voice in it. The judicial review that we've got a hearing in the Supreme Court on the 3rd of February 2026 will deliver results. But the shocking thing, Mark, is that my little charity, we have had to fund that action privately. The state has got unlimited money to protect the neglect that they are guilty of, whereas we are having to fight tooth and nail to ensure that survivors and victims are not abandoned for future generations. So, for me, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And unfortunately, I have very little trust in any politician from any political persuasion, because I've heard lies and promises and excuses for almost 20 years. So, I always hope for the best and expect the worst. Let's see where we go with this one.
Most definitely. Well, the Maggie Oliver Foundation does incredible work supporting victims and helping draw attention to these wicked crimes which are ongoing. And they're very happy to receive your donations to support their work. Just go to themaggieoliverfoundation.com. My thanks to Maggie Oliver, former Detective Constable at Greater Manchester Police and whistleblower on the Rochdale grooming gang scandal. Next up, The war of words between Donald Trump and the BBC worsens. Don't go anywhere.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Maggie Oliver says Matt should get all the praise and recognition for her sacrifice and determination to expose the truth that we've all known for years was happening. I just find it's just I find Tommy Robinson also has made sacrifices by exposing the truth that we see happening and never gets the same recognition. We'll get to more of your feedback and thoughts in just a moment. But the war of words between the President of the United States and the BBC has worsened. The state broadcaster, the corporation, has admitted misleading viewers by claiming that Donald Trump called for one of his leading critics to be shot in the face. In an internal memo, BBC News said its coverage had been inaccurate, but no correction was ever issued publicly. The claims concerned Liz Cheney, the daughter of former US Vice President Dick Cheney, and a vocal Republican opponent of Mr. Trump. Let's get reaction now from a veteran of BBC broadcasting, former BBC executive and presenter, Roger Bolton. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning.
An unwelcome headline for the BBC, where they would be hoping, wouldn't they, to move on from the Trump panorama scandal. But here we go again.
Well, they'd never be allowed to, because there are people like the Daily Telegraph, the Mail and others who just seize on any bad news and put it on the front page. They don't put the good news. Look, let's be very clear. This was a mistake, shouldn't have been done. But I went back and checked the BBC News website report for the time, and that's entirely accurate. The BBC should have apologised, but it's entirely accurate. It should remind ourselves what Trump actually said. She said about Liz Cheney, who's a Republican and the daughter of a former American vice president. He said he called her a war hawk and dumb, and said, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. OK, let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. Now, that's what the BBC should have reported. It should not have reported in the way it did. But, you know, this is Donald Trump.
Most definitely, but of course he's the President of the United States. America is our #1 economic and diplomatic and military ally. And what it looks like, the mood music, whether it's this anecdote or whether, of course, it's Panorama or Newsnight or other examples of anti-Trump bias, our national state broadcaster is doing us as a nation no favours by enraging the president.
Well, national state broadcaster, the BBC isn't a national state broadcaster, but never mind.
How so? How so?
Oh no, wait, well, it isn't a state. It's not paid for directly by the state like other broadcasters.
Well, it's an arm of the state, isn't it? It's paid for by an obligatory public tax if you switch on your telly.
Sounds
pretty statist.
But let's go
to
to the main point. Let's go to the.
It's not exactly Netflix, is it?
No, let's go to the essence of it, which is about Trump. By the way, if you've read the American foreign policy strategy document of last week, and you've read the interview he gave to Politico, you will see that actually American foreign policy is changing very significantly. And far from being our number one ally now, there is a real problem in the relationship because America, under Trump, has decided to look towards the other direction, effectively tells, Ukraine just settle, and is prepared to, if not pull out of NATO, weaken its resolve. So I don't think you can make statements anymore in which you say America is our main ally. As for Donald Trump, what can we say? He lies, he exaggerates, he throws abuse at everybody. Look at what he said about
So does Rachel Reeves and so does Sir Keir Starmer, but the BBC is strangely silent on those issues.
Come on, Mark, please.
Keir Starmer is a bigger liar than Donald Trump, I would suggest. He's a wicked liar.
Who are you talking about?
Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is an outrageous liar.
You called him a wicked liar?
Yes, I think it's wicked. I think it's egregious what he's done. He said that he would raise taxes by around £11 billion. He's raised them by almost 80. He said he would smash the gangs when he knew that he couldn't. By scrapping Rwanda, the boats crisis is worse. He's a wicked liar.
Hold on. Don't you think you have an obligation?
He's much worse than Trump.
Hold on.
At least Trump's closed the border and improved the terms by which America trades. He's smashing it. He's ended 8 wars. He's about to end the Ukrainian war. My God, he's amazing.
Are you interested, Mark, in the conversation?
Of course.
What I would suggest happens here is that all of us, and you included, but certainly Donald Trump, are using language in a way we wouldn't have before, which encourages people to think there's a conspiracy against them, as opposed to very difficult issues which all governments have to deal with. I'm not going to defend the Labour government, as I wouldn't defend the Conservative government before for its record. But what I do think we need to do
I agree with you on
is
that.
Be more respectful of politicians and the difficulties they face. We don't need to be that respectful of a United States president who uses language in that way. So the BBC should make absolutely sure it reports accurately, should apologise when it doesn't. But can we tone this down? We are in a dangerous situation for liberal democracy. There is a real question about whether it's going to survive in the United States. I would suggest that all of us try and understand the problems and talk in reasonable language instead of using language like wicked. Wicked is not mistaken, saying somebody's mistaken.
It's a moral judgment on a man who is a proven liar.
You're making
and he's nearly as bad as his neighbour at number 11, who said that the focus of this government would be growth, 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 and she's literally destroyed growth.
Well,
and she has completely backtracked on her plans for taxation.
Mark, you're under obligation to be impartial. You can express opinion, you should be impartial. You should be very careful about using language.
I'm not under any obligation to be impartial. What's required across the 3 hours of this programme is for a variety of views, and I'm so delighted to have yours, which are at odds with mine, and that's the essence of talk.
No, my views on this are that you and all the rest of us have to face up to real difficult issues in this country, an ageing population, a soaring benefits, real problems about getting productivity and growth going.
Absolutely.
All parties have faced this. Instead of calling politicians wicked, why don't we try and examine those issues, and as the same with immigration, and try and work together a bit more closely? You calling the Prime Minister wicked does nothing for the standard of public debate.
Well, are we allowed to call him a liar? But Trump, the BBC will characterise Donald Trump as a dishonest man and a narcissist and a liar. Can't we do the same for Keir Starmer, who I would argue is just as bad, if not worse?
Well, it's interesting you make that comparison. A lot of people wouldn't. But can we just tone all the language down? I wish the President of the United States...
In what way is Keir Starmer more trustworthy and more, morally virtuous than the President? Well, you just poured a bucket of the brown stuff over Donald Trump, who is transforming the fortunes of the United States. And I've got deep Trump envy. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is destroying this country. So we should call that out.
Well, that's your view.
But in your worldview, in your woke bubble, Roger. Trump's the bad guy, and Keir Starmer is this sort of wonderful, pillar of the establishment.
No, not at all. You're putting words into
who we
my
can't
mouth.
call wicked. Well, I think it's wicked to lie, and I think it's a threat to liberal democracy
do you want me to say
have a manifesto upon which you renege. That's a breach of contract.
Am I allowed to say anything?
Absolutely.
I thought you were an interviewer. Sorry, and I thought I was the interviewee. You were making a whole range of statements, some
all of
which
which
I
are provable.
I don't, but I'm not here to a political figure. What I am here to try and do.
You've just been political about Donald Trump. You just said he was a terrible man.
I didn't say a terrible. What I said was his language is anybody.
You said he's a threat to the liberal world order or some other nonsense.
This is an impossible conversation because you're determined to push onto me a set of political views like woke, which I may or may not have. You're determined to identify me, and what I'm trying to do is dealing with journalism and suggesting to you that you should do some journalism, analyse the facts instead of simply pouring adjectives onto everybody and calling the Prime Minister of this country wicked. Mistaken, fine. He's misled people, fine. You can say all these things. Wicked's a very special word, and I think we should be very careful about how we use it. We need now our politicians to solve extremely difficult problems. We're in a divided country with a massive series of problems for Ukraine and immigration and everything else. If we start just condemning each other instead of trying to understand the issues and understand each other's point of view, we're finished. Using language about our Prime Minister like wicked does not help.
Roger, thank you so much. And maybe I was too inflammatory. What do you think, folks? 03444999000. Roger Bolden, thank you for that. Keep it talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 11. Lovely to have your company, Mark Dolan, in for the fabulous Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is poorly today. We wish her well. She is the queen of this place. Speedy recovery, Julia. The world, I would argue, is an unsafe place when Julia is not in strong voice. Breaking this morning, and the likely next president of France has said that he and Nigel Farage can end the boats crisis in an Anglo-French alliance should the two men achieve power, and the polls would suggest that they will achieve power. Does this give you hope for the future? Meanwhile, as Donald Trump launches another attack on the open borders loving London Mayor Sadiq Khan, is the president right that Europe faces a cultural and civilizational collapse if we don't tackle illegal immigration? Meanwhile, as flu cases worsen, is it time to mandate masks? Well, if they didn't work then, why would they work now? Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. I've just spoken to Roger Bolton, who's a brilliant BBC journalist, former BBC journalist and presenter, a broadcaster of considerable esteem. I'm a big fan of his. We disagree on a number of issues, and one of them is whether or not you can call Keir Starmer wicked. Off the back of our interview, I said that I think Keir Starmer is wicked. I think he's a liar because I think it's wrong to have a manifesto upon which you completely renege and don't do any of the things that you said you were going to do, and then do lots of other things that you didn't say you were going to do, such as raise taxes by an extra £70 billion, hand over the Chagos Islands, or roll out digital ID. But there you go. Have I gone too far? Is it wrong to describe Sir Keir Starmer as wicked? Meanwhile, let's talk about the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who has been giving evidence to an inquiry in the House of Commons, a select committee. And she said that there were too many inaccurate and damaging leaks in the run-up to the budget. In a statement to the Treasury Select Committee, the Chancellor said she was frustrated by the volume of speculation around her fiscal plans, insisting such briefings must never be allowed to happen again. That is a bit like, folks, at 11:04, the guy that burgled your house saying, I think it's really bad that your house was burgled. Yes, I'm the burglar, but I think it's really bad that that burglary happened. We are being gaslit. Does she think we're stupid? This is the Chancellor that was the leakiest Chancellor, metaphorically, since the Titanic, and this ship is definitely going down. This is the Chancellor that rolled the pitch for tax rises about 2 weeks before the budget at the beginning of November, then changed her mind and was responsible for all of this speculation. The same Chancellor that talked down the economic outlook for the country when she became the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Is she having a laugh? Your reaction, please, 03444991000. I've got a voice note from Bridget on the subject of Rachel Reeves. Take a listen.
Good morning, Mark and Claire. Good show. It's Bridget here in France. Rachel Reeves basically hasn't a clue what she's doing. We all know that. Incompetence and compulsive lying go hand in hand with this Labour government, and all Labour governments actually. She's continuing what Tony Blair started. She is constructing a dependent society. Tony Blair started this. He handed out benefits even to people who didn't need it, because you create a dependent society and they'll vote for you. And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's typical far left socialism.
What a brilliant voice note. Thank you for that, Bridget. Keep them coming. 03444991000. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, Claire Pearsall, has said the budget had too much speculation. There were too many leaks, and much of those leaks and speculation were inaccurate, very damaging and wrong. Your reaction?
I can't help but laugh, because all of the pitch rolling, as you've said, was by Rachel Reeves. She held the most amazing breakfast briefing in the city to sort of say, this is what I think should happen. This is, these are my thoughts. And you wouldn't do that if your budget was meant to be secret. Why are you going out there as Chancellor, putting yourself in front of a room full of people and journalists to say, there's nothing to see here, it's all going swimmingly? I mean, absolutely ridiculous. So all of those leaks and any inquiry that comes with it is going to focus the mind on her. I don't understand why she's surprised.
This is, OK, so the accidental release of the budget a couple of hours before the budget statement, that's fine. That was the OBR. The head of that has gone, in my view. The wrong public figure in relation to the economy lost their job, but that's another story. But this is actually gaslighting. This is a Chancellor that has always drip-fed views and speculation about what the budget would contain. And this is someone that played politics with our economy from day one of becoming Chancellor by talking about a £20 billion black hole, which was very self-destructive, because what she did is dented business confidence and therefore destroyed the growth to which she was aspiring.
Exactly. And then when you find out that the black hole isn't exactly either there or as large as she has said it is. And they're trying to be very clever with politics, and unfortunately they're not very good at it, so they can't do it. You have to be really good. If you're going to put out these kind of messages, you're going to fly flags and send up little sort of smoke signals, you have to be really good. They're not, and their communication surrounding it is such an appalling state.
Politics trumps economics. You know what's really odd and very silly is that when she became Chancellor, she should have offered a very upbeat view of the outlook for the country, because then she would have got growth down the line. She'd come in and go, look, yes, we've inherited a mess, but I'm deeply confident about the potential of this country and we're going to grow, grow, grow. Instead, she didn't. It was doom and gloom for a year. That led to the Halloween budget, and then a budget was arguably even worse on the 26th of November this year. It was the horrible second album. Let's get some views now from a good friend of mine, Sebastian Salek, who is a Labour councillor and commentator. Good morning, Seb.
Good morning. Good to see you on a weekday. How are you?
Yes, indeed. I've been dragged out of bed. Poor Julia's got the lurgy. And I will do a pale imitation, Sebastian. What about this, though? Rachel Reeves says there were too many budget leaks. Wasn't she the one responsible for them?
Oh, you never know where these things are coming from, do you? I mean, ideally, you want a tight ship where everybody is rowing in the same direction, to use an awful metaphor, but crucially not saying things they shouldn't be to journalists. And I think especially around the budget, you want to make sure that things are tight. Now, look, I think sometimes it is useful to get some ideas out there, get a read on the public, especially when you're making big decisions. You can use that as a bit of a barometer, can't you?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you want to be in control in number 11 rather than having people going rogue and leaking things they shouldn't be.
Yeah, most definitely. Is Sir Keir Starmer a wicked liar?
I don't think so. Look, I was having this conversation with Julia the other day. I don't see the argument that he is in some way evil. This is a man who has given most of his life to public service. He's often worked for free for people who needed it when he was a lawyer. He could have hung up his boots a long time ago, but he's chosen to come into Parliament to serve again in a job that is really hard, in a time that we can all accept is really, really hard. I certainly wouldn't want to be Prime Minister right now. And he's making the best of it. Look, I think I always say this, I get bored of saying it, it's going to take time to turn things around. But I don't think he's any way malicious or a liar or anything like that. Just really, really doesn't wash with me.
If you've got a manifesto that proposes a number of policies and then what pans out is the polar opposite, that's lying, isn't it? Or at least misinformation or untruth?
It would be if that were your intention the whole time. If you thought, yes, we're going to say these things, and the second we get in, we're going to change our mind, do something completely different.
I think that was their plan. I think there was their plan, because they'd seen the books. When they said we won't raise taxes on working people, they knew full well that they would. And that's why I think it's wicked, because I think lying is always wicked, especially if it affects people's lives.
When are you suggesting this happened? Are you talking about recently, or are you talking about...
I'm talking about the manifesto where they said that they would only need to raise taxes by about £11 billion. We've had about 70 billion's worth. And when Rachel Reeves, she had her budget, the October budget, of course, in 2024, the Halloween budget, and she said, this will be the last time I come and get your money. And a year later, it was even worse. That's lying, isn't it?
No, because as you know, the position changes so quickly. They didn't know about the initial black hole. That was a huge moment when they came into power and realised the severity of the situation. Then the economy transformed, didn't it? We had tariffs from Trump. We had all sorts of global developments, and things didn't go so well locally, domestically either. And you have to be able to respond to that. That's your job as the Chancellor, to be nimble. And sometimes
you've got to respond to
what you initially hoped to do.
Yeah, you've got to respond to the consequences of your own terrible policies. I mean, there was no pandemic, no fresh invasion, no excuse whatsoever. Even energy prices are coming down, but our bills are going up.
Well, energy bills, again, it's going to take time. And I think GB Energy is a really good response to that. It's about making sure that our energy is homegrown, that we own it, that if Russia invades another country, it doesn't see our prices spike, and it's more sustainable for the future. Look, I know that renewable energy feels expensive because up front it is. It requires an investment, but the idea is that pays off over time. And once we get over that initial hump, we can enjoy cheaper energy like they do in France, where they're heavily invested in nuclear, and many other countries as well.
Is Roger Bolton right, former BBC executive and presenter, that I've gone too far using the word wicked about the Prime Minister?
I think so. It goes back to what I was saying a moment ago. Look, criticise the Prime Minister all you want. I think we have a brilliant free press, and we're very happy as Brits to criticise and satirise and all those things, which are really important. I wouldn't want to live in a country where we couldn't do any of that. But I just don't believe that he is malicious. From everything I've seen of him, right down to a local level within the party, it's full of people who want the best for their residents and for their constituents. I don't think anybody has an evil agenda going on. It's just, I've seen no clue of that whatsoever. If I had, I wouldn't be in the party. It's not something I'd want to be associated with.
Sebastian, flu cases are worsening. My heart goes out to any of our viewers and listeners who are struggling with a very nasty strain at the moment. Do we need to bring back masks to stop the spread?
I think it's up to individual choice, isn't it? Now, look, I think masks are effective. I read the scientific studies and I see the data on this, and it shows that whether it's a non-surgical mask or a surgical mask or a layered non-surgical mask, they can both reduce transmission rates. I don't think we should be mandating it. I don't think we should be telling people what to do. We didn't do that during COVID either, but it comes back to that idea of...
We mandated masks during COVID. That's why I chopped one up on the radio and had a viral video.
You did.
It was the making of me.
Remind me, because it was so long ago and it was all a blur.
2020. We were told don't wear them, they don't work.
Was that a recommendation?
Yeah, we were told not to wear them, they don't work. They're very bad for the environment, of course. And then suddenly they mandated them because they wanted to have the messaging that we're in a pandemic. It was all theatre.
Was it a law, though, that you had to wear a mask?
Well, it was a mandate. It wasn't a law, no. But that's what I'm getting at. Couldn't go into Sainsbury's without one.
Yeah, no, you're right. So it was never a full law. And I think now, look, I think that the chap from the top of the NHS who's recommending this is perfectly sensible. It is a way of lowering transmission rates. And it's just a way of looking out for your fellow citizens, isn't it? If you're going to get on the train or on the bus or go to the supermarket, it's helpful if you're coughing and sneezing to be able to contain that physically rather than spluttering out all over the avocados, wherever it is you're buying.
Is it not worrying that the head of the NHS is so profoundly ignorant about science?
I don't think.
I mean, this is a guy who heads an organisation that's supposed to help us with our health and keep us alive, keep us on the planet. And he thinks that a surgical mask is going to stop a seasonal respiratory virus, which is a bit of a hard sell given the fact that the holes in a mask are around 1,000 times bigger than the virus itself. I mean, should this guy be in charge of the NHS if he believes in such junk science?
I mean, as I say, the studies that I've read certainly show that it slows transmission, whether it's a surgical or a non-surgical mask. If you've got any studies to suggest the opposite, I'd be very keen to read them.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I've got Texas and I've got Florida who didn't mandate masks, and they had the same, if not better, outcomes during the COVID-19 pandemic. Similarly, Sweden, who never mandated masks, and they've had the lowest excess deaths across Europe from 2020 to 2023.
Yeah, I think Sweden's a really interesting one because they have a very high level of compliance, and that's really the strategy that they use.
No, that's not true. No, people didn't wear masks in Sweden. There was footage during the pandemic of people in cafes having normal lives, going to work, mask-free. It's not a ringing endorsement for those filthy face rags, is it?
All I'm telling you is that was the strategy in Finland that the government used, that they asked people to do things rather than forcing them to. And for them, you may argue it worked. I've seen, again, a study that suggests that if they did what we did, their deaths would have been halved and vice versa. Our deaths would have doubled if we've done what they've done. So, look, I think broadly, let's go back to the pandemic. Let's get into it. I think the government made a lot of good decisions that they had to at the time. They obviously made a lot of mess ups as well.
Do you think those surgical masks stop transmission of a virus like the flu?
They don't stop transmission, but they certainly slow it.
How do they do that? What is the mechanism by which they stop this tiny, tiny airborne virus?
I don't know.
How does it happen?
I just have to trust.
You've read the studies. You're right up to date with all the reports and everything, aren't you?
I've read the studies.
Wasn't that your bedtime reading last night, Seb?
No, look,
what it is, right? I'm really happy with real measures, right? I'm not a monster, okay? The virus is horrific. You know, people are struggling with flu, and of course, COVID was devastating. It was a horrific pandemic. But what I want advice and policies that actually work. You know, if you've got the flu at the moment, it makes a lot of sense to stay home and don't give it to your colleagues. I get that. you know. But do we have to peddle this nonsense about masks once again, which were basically a left-wing mechanism of control?
I think that's a little bit tinfoil hat, Mark.
Well, why did the left? Why were the left so? Why did they love the masks, and why did Keir Starmer keep wearing the masks even after the pandemic when everyone else went, I'm afraid they don't work?
I'll remind you, Mark, crucially, the left weren't in government during the pandemic. It was the Tories telling us to wear masks, because I don't think really it should be a political issue. If there's a scientific consensus on something, we can move past it.
Nigel Farage didn't wear a mask. I mean, just a quick one, Sebastian. Obviously, don't want to, you know, it's a bit retro going back to the masks thing, but an interesting one with the masks. You mentioned the surgical masks, which you believe might slow the spread. Well, Germany did not recognise those surgical masks, right? You couldn't get on a train with a surgical mask during the pandemic because they said they don't work. It has to be an N95.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you wear an N95, that is going to be more effective, isn't it? They're just a higher tech.
So we don't have to wear the surgical ones then? We don't have to...
Well,
you agree with the Germans?
Of efficacy, aren't there, with masks? You know, if you put a tissue over your mouth, it's going to do something, but not as much as if you wear a surgical mask, and not as much as if you wear an N95. You know, it sits on a spectrum. What I would say as a general message is that we should be courteous to those that we're around. If we are coughing and spluttering, but we have to go out, just try and cover up and try and stop the spread of a virus that can be really nasty and end up with somebody else off work and not being able to earn money and all the rest of it.
Seb, stay with me. Thank you for this. A quick response, if you can, from Claire Pearsall. What do you think about this? Have I gone too far?
What, with the word wicked?
No, well, no, we've got wicked, of course. But the masking.
The masking. Do you know what? I
can't do this theatre.
No, I can't.
I don't want to have to pretend.
No, and I think that if we had some evidence that it was absolutely going to stop transmission, then people would do that.
Like staying home, that works.
Staying home works. Do you know what? Washing your hands. People just need to look after their own hand sanitizer. Just use that, wash your hands, stay home when you're ill. Just a little bit of common sense. We don't need to bring back masks.
Listen, quick one before you go, Sebastian. Lovely to have you on the show, as always. What do you make of Donald Trump's remarks about Sadiq Khan, a horrible mayor who loves open borders and is destroying the capital?
I mean, we know what Trump thinks of Sadiq Khan, don't we? And we know what he thinks of Muslims in general. He's never been particularly benevolent towards them. It was one of the first things he did, wasn't it, back in 2016, was banning Muslims from coming into the US. And I really do think that's a big part of the reason Trump is so rude about Sadiq Khan. Look, I live under Sadiq Khan in London, and I'm very pleased to. He's been very successful electorally, despite taking some really big risks. ULEZ was a massive risk. It was clearly controversial, but it's paid off. 99% of sites across London that test for air quality have seen an improvement since 2019. I think that's something to be incredibly proud of. In a city of 9 million people, we deserve to have healthy lungs, and I'm very thankful to the mayor for that.
Sebastian, you're not wicked at all. You're a star. Thank you so much for joining us. We always love having you on the show. Sebastian Salek is a Labour councillor and commentator. And listen, lots of people will just think I've got no problem wearing a mask if it's a sort of polite thing to do on public transport, etc. Let me know what you think about that. But next up, is Keir Starmer wicked? This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Masks, Dave in Dorset. I have a stinking cold, says Dave. Out of respect for the medical staff, I had a hospital appointment and I wore a mask. The staff I met asked me if they should wear a mask too. I said I had a bad cold, so they didn't wear masks. I thought to wear a mask for their benefit. I also kept well away from others who were sat waiting for their appointments too. So very supportive there for regards to masks. Andy says, good morning, Mark. They are surgical masks. It says so on the box. They prevent droplets exhaled by the surgeon going into an open wound. They do not stop airborne viruses. However, if you have flu symptoms and must go out, I can see how they might prevent you coughing, exhalations spreading. But you also must remember that they impede the exhalation of bad stuff your body is trying to get rid of and are therefore bad for you. Is Sir Keir Starmer wicked? Stephen in London, yes, of course he's wicked. He's a clear and obvious liar. He wants to overturn the vote on Brexit. He hasn't any intention of smashing the gangs, said our council taxes wouldn't go up, wouldn't come back for more tax. He's lied. He is a liar. That's Stephen in London. Georgia is in the capital as well. Good morning, Georgia.
Good morning, Mark. I just wanted to say that you were absolutely fantastic. That interview with that patronising, pompous BBC twerp.
Wow, you're not pulling your punches. Well, thank you for the kind words, Georgia.
No, it was the best interview I've heard in ages, I've got to tell you, because I listen to Talk all the time. And you were fantastic. You were like a tank.
Well, no, you're
letting him get in.
You're very kind. I mean, I think it's wicked to lie to the British people, and I think it's wicked to have policies which are destroying the country.
Absolutely, but I mean, he's just absolutely so hypocritical. I mean, really, we got Starmer. Everything you said, I can't say anymore because you were perfect.
Oh, no, listen, Georgia, you're too kind for that. However, does Roger have a point that maybe the word wicked is a little inflammatory?
No, because I think they're all wicked, actually. I'm sorry. I cannot stand what's going on. I think the whole lot of them. I mean, the whole thing is so evil and wicked, and I don't know. I just really don't like it.
Well, it's because it affects people's lives, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does, yes. And as far as that thing with Trump and Khan, Khan deserves everything he gets. I have not forgotten the picture of that balloon over London, all right, the infantile thing. Yeah. That's what he allowed to hang over here on a state visit by Trump.
Georgia, you're so right about that, and I would say that London has turned into a lawless nightmare under his mayoralty.
I live here. I know exactly what goes on.
Well, yeah. How has the city changed in the last sort of decade?
I can tell you so much. No. I've been here on and off because I lived overseas for many, many years in the Middle East. So I see a lot of that's going on. I see right through the whole thing. So it has changed. Of course, it's changed. And
not for the better.
No, it's not for the better. No, I was punched in the chest last week. I was walking through the high street. And
Georgia, I'm so sorry. What was the background to that? Was it an attempted robbery or something? What happened?
No, I don't know. I was with my daughter, and this guy was running along the pavement, like a maniac, and it was so crowded. And he just lunged at me and punched me. I mean, I got out of his way. I stepped aside, you know, because he was coming so fast. Everybody was staring at it. I mean, I was so shocked that, first of all, I'm like, what was that, you know? And, I mean, I've been in the park as well a couple of times where I've, you know, been sort of, well, not assaulted, but sort of had a few incidents. So it has changed. Yeah, I won't go into it all, but I mean, I did go and see a policeman at the time, and they was like, oh, well, make a report, write in, you know. And so write in, who's going to sit? I mean, I'm not going to do all that.
No, and there is an issue around women's safety in our major cities now, Georgia, and it seems that there are men who think that they can behave like this with impunity. And that's an awful incident with you being punched in the chest. But you know as well as I do, there's barely any point going to the cops about it.
Absolutely none. And also, I know I talked to. I mean, I've seen the change even in the high street. I mean, you can't go into a shop; they've got guards outside. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is.
And body cams in the co-op and other supermarkets.
Absolutely, yeah, I know, I see it, and I've been warned. You know, there's a guy, like not a bodyguard there that I sort of talk to sometimes, and he said, "You be very careful because there's so much going on here. You know, you don't even see it." And I'm very aware of it. I know what's happened. I think I could write a book about it. I've seen it all. And I knew this would happen anyway. So, you know, I've lived overseas. The trouble is, you know, people are very naive here. Yeah. They don't understand that other cultures have different ways. And, I mean, you've got to travel. I always say to people, travel and see. And you show respect in other countries. I've lived in a Middle Eastern country for years. We show great respect there, and if we didn't, we'd be out. And these people don't do. I mean, I'm rambling now, so I would.
No, you're making a lot of sense.
No, I know, but I see it all. You know, I see what's happening, and you have to respect the cultures that you're in. You know, and this is what's not happening.
Correct. And that's why we've just got, you know, parallel societies and people are ignoring the rule of law and marching Georgia down the street with a placard that says globalise the intifada, which means bombs on public transport and in shopping centres. Georgia, my heart goes out to you. I'm really sorry for that attack you suffered last week. That's just awful and traumatic and dangerous as well. And I just hope you're able to just, you know, essentially move on from that incident and not feel too scared to go out in your own city. And thanks for the kind words. David is in Scotland. And David, is Keir Starmer wicked?
He is an absolute... Everything you say in the football world starts with a W. And yes, yes.
I think I can put two and two together. And David, what about the word wicked though? Is it too I don't know, personal a way of describing the Prime Minister? Roger Bolton from the BBC, ex-BBC executive, said that that's inflammatory language and dangerous by me.
And I'll tell you something, that's another W that should just be taken out of public. The way to deal with this immigration is the UK, who, as you can tell, with my accent, I'm Scottish.
Yeah.
But my passport says I'm a British citizen.
Yes.
And I'm British, right? I'm not Scottish. I'm British. Simple way to deal with the box is we've got the best special forces in the world. And the SAS was created in Scotland. So the easy way to deal with it is when you put these boats from France to Britain, is you put the SAS, SBS, Royal Marines.
Yeah, Navy. Get the Navy on the job.
And no. Puncture the boats in French waters. Just puncture the boats in French waters. So the French now need to take them back.
Yeah.
Do that for 1 week, and I'll guarantee you that is problem solved.
David for Home Secretary. David, thank you for that call. A lot of common sense. Well, David will love this headline in the Telegraph today. Bardella, I will stop the boats. This is the guy that hopes to be the next president of France. He thinks that Nigel Farage will be PM in 3 years' time, and he's hoping that those two, President of France, Prime Minister of UK, will be the dream team to end illegal immigration across Europe. Will it happen? 03444 99 1000. More on this next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
11:34, you're listening to Talk, and it's Mark Dolan in for the fabulous Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is poorly. We wish her well. A big day for the channel, because at 7 p.m. this evening, Talk will bring you never-seen-before undercover footage from inside the world's most dangerous migrant camps in Calais, where gunfire is a nightly reality, plus extraordinary new evidence showing French police escorting migrants on public transport all the way to the beaches, doing nothing to stop the crossings. Isabel Oakeshott presents The Undercover Migrant is playing out this evening at 7 p.m, only on Talk. Let's take a clip.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, all at every key point, the police, the French military police and the French police were, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
A bold and important documentary, The Undercover Migrant, airs this evening at 7 p.m, only on Talk. And Talk's international editor is Isabel Oakeshott, who's made this film. She joins us now. Hi, Isabel.
Good morning. Well, thank you for explaining what this documentary is about. Now, to the best of my knowledge, no British citizen who doesn't work perhaps for the intelligence services or some such, no reporter anyway, has ever got into the heart of the migrant camps. Why not? Because the French police are very obstructive towards journalists that try to get to the action, to try to find out what is really going on in those migrant encampments. These are huge encampments in northern France. And what the French police do is they will stop journalists, they will demand to see passports, they will demand to see media accreditation. And even with that, you cannot get into the heart of the camp. So what is the way around that? Well, I decided that this was going to involve somebody going undercover. Now, it couldn't be me. With the best will in the world, I'm not going to fit in the migrant camp. So I worked with an amazing volunteer, a very, very brave young man from Rochdale. He's a builder, that's his day job. And he feels passionately, like so many of our listeners, about this migrant crisis. And so he agreed to do something extraordinarily dangerous, and that was to pose as a migrant so that he could live alongside the asylum seekers in these camps, and what he discovered and the experiences he had is truly extraordinary.
A portion of these men, as a result of the findings of this documentary, are provably dangerous and violent. A portion of them, not all, I stress, many of them heading in our direction across the Channel, Isabel.
And that is what's so frightening. So one of our main objectives in this undercover operation was to get to the truth about the kind of people heading our way. And I want to say, and Christian would say this too, the operative that we used here, that some of the people in those camps seemed quite nice. You know, he worked hard to build relationships in a camp because he wanted to learn more about what kind of people are coming and what their backstory is. But I'm afraid to say that the camps of Dunkirk and Calais are a seething mass of drug dealers, of petty criminals, and worse. There are some properly undesirable people there. And I tell you what they have in common, all of them, because you've got people from all over the world, pretty much except Europe. And that's why our undercover migrant had a hard job to blend in there. What they do all have in common is that they want to get to Britain. And I'm afraid he was hard pressed to find anybody in that camp that obviously had anything much to offer our society. He did come across the odd one that might have been leaving a very difficult regime. But most people in that camp appear to only have what they're wearing on their back. They are very impoverished people who are being managed every step of the way till they get to France by handlers. And a lot of them, we don't think, are actually paying to get on that boat in any conventional way. So how are they doing it? Well, what these are modern day slaves, basically. That is bad for our country in so many ways, because how exactly do people think they're paying back for their boat fare? I don't think it's going to be by doing legitimate jobs in the UK.
Modern day slavery, and yet the left are silent on this issue, with Sir Keir Starmer scrapping the Rwanda plan before the election, even, and I quote, if it works. Front page of The Telegraph, a paper you write for very often, Isabel. Bardella, I will stop the boats. Britain will be allowed to push small boats carrying migrants back into French waters under immigration plans put forward by Jordan Bardella, the man tipped to become France's next president. He's been speaking very positively about Nigel Farage. He's hopeful that he'll be in power in 2 years' time and Nigel Farage in 3. And he's suggesting an Anglo-French alliance to tackle illegal immigration across Europe.
Well, of course, that's what we should have. And that's what Keir Starmer pretends we have. And that's why he's signing off every year hundreds of millions of pounds to go to the French. And yet, under the current situation, the French police aren't just standing by. You know, our listeners and viewers have many times seen pictures of the French police casually standing on the beach watching migrant boats depart. It's much worse than that, Mark. That's what this documentary reveals. They are utterly complicit. They are enabling this. They are actively facilitating the transfer of large groups of migrants from camps many, many kilometres across northern France to boat departure points. That is completely scandalous, completely indefensible, and should be cause for the UK to demand its money back.
Must-see viewing. Isabel Oakeshott presents The Undercover Migrant this evening at 7 p.m. only on Talk. Extraordinary journalism, Isabel. Thank you so much, and I'll be stopping everything at 7 to listen to your documentary. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Crackerjack interview. You really skewered him. You should be really proud of yourself.
Oh, are we talking about Roger Bolton, former BBC executive? Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Andrew. I think it had to be said. I mean, is it too strong calling Starmer wicked?
You hit the nail on the head. The wicked thing he did was he didn't immediately call for a judicial inquiry into the Pakistani Kurdish male rape gangs.
Yeah.
That was wicked, because what he was doing was saying to the victims, you don't matter. And that was wicked. He overtly, in a public environment, he showed contempt for them. And they have suffered. If you listen to that Maggie Oliver, it's horrific. And no one cares. And the Prime Minister doesn't care. He's a wicked person.
Andrew, what about the potentially incoming president of France, whose name is Jordan Bardella? He's the protege of Marine Le Pen, who for legal reasons may not be able to run for high office. She looks like she's facing a 5-year ban. If he gets in, he says he'll stop the boats with the help of Nigel Farage as PM in 3 years' time. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, when you come in that sort of role, you've got to actually deliver something. So if you look at Trump, he wrote all those orders. What could he deliver to show that voting to the right in France delivered something? Now, I have been to northern France, and your programme tonight, I'd urge everybody to listen to it. Those camps are horrific. I mean, they really, and they've wrecked that coastline and that part of France. So it's in his interest to partner with Nigel and deliver the clean-up of northern France. And it's a good thing for us. It's good for Britain if that man gets in.
Andrew, here's hoping. Brilliant to get your call. Thank you for the kind words about my earlier interview with Roger Bolton, and well said on the grooming gang scandal, which shames this nation, and to a degree it's a cover-up which continues to this day. Andrew in Hertfordshire there. As flu cases worsen, is it time to mandate masks? That's next.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of there quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 11:46 and I have an announcement to make. In 2020, I broke the internet by chopping up a mask during the COVID-19 pandemic because I described them as anti-scientific, filthy, disgusting, environmentally catastrophic rags. Well, I'd like to apologise. I was completely wrong. With flu cases on the increase, I'm now going to muzzle myself with this nappy, which I've got to say looks more like a pair of ladies' knickers. Mrs. Dolan's going to be very, very cross with me when I get home. Have they even been dry cleaned? So let's hope I'm going to save millions of lives with this rather papery thin piece of rubbish on my face. Yes, folks, stay home, save the NHS, and don't forget to mask up. You might have noticed a degree of irony in my tone. Can you believe it? Mainly left-wing voices are saying bring back the masks and mandate them, even though in my view there's very little evidence that they did anything to stop COVID or will do anything to stop the flu virus. But let's get the facts, shall we? From Jamie Jenkins, who is the former head of health analysis at the Office for National Statistics. Hi, Jamie.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. I love your mask. Is it a Christmas present?
Yes, indeed. It's an early stocking filler, and I'm so delighted to have it. I'll be having it fumigated later. Jamie, can you believe that we're having this conversation all over again?
Well, no, I can't believe it, Mark. We've probably discussed many times over the years the old mask mandates, and it was a great clip of you back in the day. I think it's one for the archive and keep showing that every Christmas. But so let's look at some of the facts. So one of the things with the pandemic that we had, there was obviously a lot of opportunity to actually see if there was any effectiveness of masks in a real world situation. Let's not talk about labs, because we're not talking about laboratories here. Let's talk real world situation. So the ONS where I used to work, they did a kind of an infection study, of COVID infection study, and they looked at what was the likelihood of testing positive for COVID for people who never wore masks and people who wore masks. And I guess what the answer was, Mark, there was no statistical difference between the two. And I think in the Department for Education as well, they did a study where they looked at the school absenteeism. So they were looking at basically schools that had masks enforced, and it was horrible for the children, and schools who didn't. Was there any significant difference in the number of people who were absent? And guess what? There was no significant difference. And at the time, Chris Whitty was saying that, there was no real strong reason to be wearing masks. And all the medical experts at the time were saying, don't think you need them. It all got brought in. So why are we going down this road of suggesting it again when there's no new evidence to suggest it? It's just a charade, I think, Mark.
It is. Polly has messaged the show, Jamie, to say if masks are mandated, I certainly won't be conforming. I've had enough of that rubbish during COVID. The issue is that this flu virus is very nasty, Jamie. I've got friends and loved ones who have had it. It's a brutal strain that's going around at the moment. It's actually very serious, and it's a headache for the NHS. So I understand that. But therefore, can we please have policies and advice that actually work? My issue with the masks is it's theatre. If you've got a stinking cold and you stay home, well, that's a policy that works.
Yeah, and the issue, if they keep talking about wear masks, if somebody genuinely has got the flu and they're coughing a lot and they think, oh, I'm going to go out, I'll stick a mask on because it'll be fine and then nobody else will get infected. Well, it doesn't work like that, does it? So it's more sensible. We don't need a national lockdown for this, but if somebody genuinely is ill, if they can just isolate themselves, and then normally if you're really ill with the flu, Mark, you can't get out of bed anyway, so you'll be isolating just because you can't get out. So the suggest that putting the masks on will fix it. Jonathan Van Tam, another medical expert from the pandemic, he was into it on Radio 4, I think, talking about he wouldn't normally wear masks. And, let's trust the science on that. And I've been back and forth hospitals the last couple of weeks when my family members is in, Mark, and the staff, because the hospitals have mandated, obviously, visitors going in. But the staff have to wear them. And many of the staff are really frustrated with this because, okay, put a mask on 5-10 minutes, half an hour when you visit in, but some of these staff have to wear it for 12 hours, Mark, and it's not good for them. So, trust the science we talked about. There's no science for this, so let's just not go down that road again.
Well, stay with us, Jamie, and that's the thing, Claire Pearsall. These masks, the science around them is flaky in regard to stopping the transmission of COVID-19 or the current influenza outbreak. Who knows? Maybe there is a 0.5 or a 1% improvement. Well, that's negligible, isn't it? That's like a rounding error. The issue is that with the science so debatable, we must focus on the harms. It's not good for your health to cover your face for 12 hours. And it's very bad for society. It has destroyed the confidence of people, especially children. And by the way, they're very bad for the environment as well.
They are. People just discard them onto the street, leave them to wash up on riverbanks, which is an appalling state to be in. But I do think the harms that were done to children have not been fully acknowledged by any government or any minister. And I've seen it working as a school governor in 2 separate schools. what happens is those children brought up in the pandemic at different stages now, the problems with things like phonics and confidence and mental health are becoming more exacerbated, and you can pinpoint that back to things like mask wearing, where children couldn't see the face of the adult, they couldn't, you know, read the lips and expressions of people, but also the isolation. And I don't think we've done enough work to square that away, but also to acknowledge that it happened.
We need, Jamie, don't we, to just put paid to the idea of masks having any impact on a seasonal respiratory virus. We've got to just end this conversation around masks. They're not a solution. They don't work.
No, and what is the better solution, Mark, is if you think of the NHS, and you can guarantee every single year that around this time there'll be Guardian headlines that the NHS is in crisis and is going to fall over. You can go back on the internet and search the last 20 years. It always happens. You were right, though. We have got a kind of a strain of flu, a mutated strain of flu, and this generally happens because what normally you look at the southern hemisphere, what strains are circulating, and try and work out what might happen in this country. So there is this mutant strain of flu, but when I go to hospitals, Mark, it's generally elderly people who are in hospital. We've got a massive kind of increase in the number of elderly people now than we had, say, 10 or 15 years ago from those post-war baby boomers. But the number of hospital beds and overall hasn't really increased, and this is only going to get worse. So what Wes Streeting and the other devolved health ministers need to be thinking about is not telling us next year wear masks, the NHS can't cope. They need to be putting the infrastructure in place, Mark, to make sure the NHS can cope, because this is going to continue every single year. You know, it's pretty obvious we can forecast this. Will they do it, Mark? They probably won't.
Very briefly, Jamie, and also Claire as well, this is theatre, isn't it? With the masking, it's the equivalent of the arrows in the supermarket. This is the authorities being able to say they've been seen to do something, that it's about protecting their backsides by covering our faces.
Yeah, and just one final thought for me on Mark. Remember, you know, Christmas a few years ago, and I think in Wales specifically, you could go to Tesco, but they closed off the book aisles because it was a non-essential item, and so it was meant to. And one final point, actually, remember the days, Mark? You could go into a restaurant, you had to go to the bar and wear a mask because it was dangerous. But when you went and sat down for 2 hours eating your meal just around the corner, you were fine without any masks because the virus obviously didn't come down there. All theatre.
It was all theatre. The world's gone mad. Well, you spoke very sensibly in the course of that pandemic, Jamie, and look forward to catching up soon. Jamie Jenkins is a former head of health analysis at the ONS. What I will say is that the majority of viral scientists and epidemiologists are very clear that the masks did help to stop the spread of COVID-19, that they saved countless lives, and they would recommend a similar policy in the course of this flu outbreak, right? The majority of medics think that the masks are very good and that they do make a difference. What say you? 0344 499 1000. Georgina's in London. Georgina, I know you want to talk about Roger Bolton, BBC executive, but what about the mask? Will you be wearing a mask to stop this flu spread this year?
Absolutely not. Don't talk ridiculous, Mark. They won't do a jot of good, and you know it, and so does the rest of Britain. Look at COVID, for goodness sake. It didn't do a jot of good, and we were all under house arrest for nearly 2 years, you know? So, come on. Masks, not a chance.
There you go. Well, look, no one would ever mask you or muzzle you, Georgina, because you make such trenchant points on talk. What's your reaction to my interview with Roger Bolton, former BBC executive? I said that Keir Starmer is a wicked liar based upon the fact that he's reneged on his manifesto policies and had policies which have harmed my viewers and listeners.
Well, I don't think that wicked is the correct word to use. I would use the word insidious for all that Keir Starmer has done to this country, the abuse of our elderly, you know, he's run our country and our economy into the ground to the point where our economy really is at the point of no return now. He's allowed the abuse of our women and children. He's a pathological liar. He takes no responsibility or accountability for either his own or his party's actions. He favours foreign nationals and illegal migrants above the British people, and he allows our veterans to sleep on the streets whilst illegal migrants have enforced our hotels. He's also put our fishing and our farming industry out of business. There's not a word I can say about Keir Starmer that's positive, and I do hate having to be so hard on one of my own species. But he gives so much ammunition, Mark, you can't help but bring to light his failings, and they are many of them.
Georgina, trenchant as ever, thank you for a brilliant call. Georgina not pulling her punches there. This from an unnamed texter says, Mark, well done keeping your temper with Roger Bolton from the BBC, who dripped condescension. Here are some alternative adjectives for Starmer. Insightful and unstatesmanlike when he labelled angry Southport protesters far-right thugs, instead of sharing the horror and anger of such a terrible attack, or asking for calm and promising to listen to concerns about our broken immigration system. Starmer was new in post and could have promised to listen and blame the Tories, as has become his habit. He chose to behave like a despot. He chose to turn his back on people when laying flowers at the site instead of speaking to them. It is egregious to allow thousands of undocumented foreign men to roam British streets at the expense of the safety of women and children. It is state abuse to use our taxes to house and feed migrants who have broken our laws. It was party politically expedient and disingenuous to leak inaccurate budget information to prop up vote rigging. Changes to our unsustainable welfare system, undemocratic to prevent local elections because you do not think your party will win. It is hypocritical to avoid paying taxes you impose on the electorate and continue in office. I could go on, says the texter. There you go, 11:58. The public, Claire Pearsall, are angry.
And rightly so. And I think the word I would put in there is incompetent. Keir Starmer is incompetent.
Yeah, he's never going to get the hang of politics. He's never going to get the hang of being Prime Minister, is he?
He looks always so uncomfortable. He almost apologetic that he's there. I think he needs to move on out and let someone else go.
Yeah, it looks like it. Watched an interview with him recently on a podcast, which is therefore a softball interview, a comfortable environment, and he looked like a rabbit in the headlights. He's not able to be himself. I don't know who is the real Starmer. Could the real Keir Starmer please stand up?
Can you imagine? He wouldn't even get that reference, would he? He's so scared of saying anything that might offend somebody, so he says nothing.
Can you think of a Prime Minister that's been found out that quickly in office? I mean, I guess Liz Truss didn't cover herself in glory. Is Starmer worse than Truss?
Of course he is. Absolutely. I mean, Liz Truss had her faults, but she was backed up by a party who knew what they were doing. Keir Starmer isn't very good, and neither is the rest of his party either.
Well, you are supremely brilliant, and I'm delighted to say that Claire Pearsall is with me for the next hour. And we've got Prime Minister's questions, a big reaction, plus, is Keir Starmer wicked? Keep it talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's head to the House of Commons and the Prime Minister and PMQs.
And terrorists due to their work as professional journalists. They gained refugee status here in 2021 and are now 3 months away from being eligible for indefinite leave to remain. The UK is their home, but their stability and family life are being threatened by changes in government policy. I'm concerned that the government has lost sight of the real-life impact that these changes will have on working families living here legally, and with details of transitional arrangements still under consultation, can the Prime Minister provide clarity regarding the transitional support available to families already on the pathway to indefinite leave to remain? Thank you.
Well, can I say this country will always be compassionate in relation to refugees and comply with our full obligations under the various conventions. It is important that we address some of the challenges we face at the moment, but we mustn't lose sight that we've always been a compassionate country that welcomes refugees to our shores.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the last government was indifferent to child poverty, this government's driving mission must be to eradicate child poverty, and the strategy is a first step on that path. Over the first 1,001 critical days in pregnancy and early years, poverty contributes to malnourished babies, developmental delay, hypothermia and poor life outcomes. This is unacceptable. So will the Prime Minister lift pregnant women and babies out of poverty in York and across the country in this Parliament and ensure that we relieve poverty over the first 1,001 critical days?
Can I thank her for raising this? And I'm proud that babies born today will have a better start in life thanks to our decisions. Mr. Speaker, I am particularly concerned by maternity services, and that's why we've commissioned a review so every mother is heard, gets proper care at what should be a special time, and currently too many are failed. We're funding healthy babies services in 75 of the most deprived areas, and we've taken action to save parents up to £500 a year on infant formula. It is a moral mission of this government to lift children out of poverty, and we intend to do so. The Leader of the Opposition thinks that maternity pay is excessive and would go back to the failment that puts hundreds of thousands of children into poverty.
Kevin Maiden, not the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I echo the sentiments of the Prime Minister? The thoughts of the whole House will rightly be with the family of Lance Corporal Hooley, who tragically died supporting Ukraine in her fight for freedom. Can the right honourable gentleman tell the House why are his own MPs describing him as a caretaker Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, my own MPs are very proud. We've just passed a budget which protected our public services and our NHS. No austerity which brought our NHS to the ground. We've created the conditions for economic stability with the headroom we need. And, Mr. Speaker, we're concentrating on the single most important issue for families up and down the country, which is the cost of living, by taking £150 off their energy bills. That's in addition to the £150 for the 6 million of the poorest household. We're concentrating on what matters to the country. She's trying to save her job.
Mr. Speaker, let me answer the question for the Prime Minister. He's being called a caretaker because everyone can see that he's lost control of his party. And this lot, they're all so busy trying to replace him.
Order. Sorry. Can I just say the same people are making the same noises they made last week. I did say last week it wasn't the right time. I wouldn't do it this week. So please, let's not carry on with the way we left it last week. Kevin Baird, no.
Mr. Speaker, they can make as much noise as they like. We all know that this lot are so busy trying to replace him that they've taken their eyes off the ball. Let's start, Mr. Speaker. Wait for it. Let's start with the Energy Secretary, who wants to recycle himself as leader. He said he'd cut families' energy bills by £300. Can the Prime Minister tell the House how much have energy bills fallen by since the election?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to say we're taking £150 off energy bills. I can also tell her that that's on top of the £150 we've taken off last year for the 3 million poorest families, now for 6 million poorest families. Mr. Speaker, she talks about leaving. The problem for us, last week,
What? Mr. May, I've told this side, I'll now tell this side. We don't need the pantomime auditions anymore, please.
Mr. Speaker, last week I pointed out that 3 of our ex-MPs went to reform. That included the former Deputy Chairman, Jonathan Gullis. He liked to think of himself as a straight talker. He said they're finished and they've lost the trust of the British people. In total, Mr. Speaker, 21 ex-Tory MPs have now left for reform. The real question, Mr. Speaker, is... The real question is, who's next? We can all see the Shadow Justice Secretary twitching after his come and get me plea from the member of Clacton. Mr. Speaker, we need no lessons from them.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him about energy bills. He could power the national grid on all of that hot air. He promised to cut energy bills by £300. Energy bills have risen by £187. But let's look at someone else who's making a mess. Let's look at the Education Secretary. Ah, there she is. Labour pledged to recruit 6,500 more teachers. So can the Prime Minister tell the House how many extra teachers are there since she became Education Secretary?
More than when they left office. I'm very proud to say so. We're in an upward trajectory. Mr. Speaker, they left our health service on its knees. They left our schools in a mess. They left our economy absolutely broken. They should be utterly ashamed of their record in service.
Wrong. Mr. Speaker, there are now 400 fewer teachers since she came into office. She's shaking her head. It's on the DFE website. Does she not check it once in a while? I can understand that the Right Honourable Lady is angry. We're all angry at the mess she's making. The Prime Minister doesn't know what's going on in energy. He doesn't know what's going on in education. Does he know anything about what's going on in the Home Office? Last year, the Prime Minister promised to recruit 13,000 more police officers. How's that going?
Prime Minister.
3,000 more by the end of March, and we're rising on police numbers. Mr. Speaker, they left the Home Office. The criminal justice system is utterly broken. Sir Brian Leveson has said on that. They lost control of our borders. They lost control of every single department. And she's obviously spent the morning rehearsing for the Liz Truss show. She's probably going to be the guest star next week. Both of them talking about how Liz Truss was 100% right. But what Liz Truss said was the Conservatives need to take... No, they don't want to hear it. The Conservatives need to take responsibility. The Conservatives need to take responsibility for their 14 years of failure. That was Liz Truss, their former leader. So perhaps she'll heed that, get up and say sorry.
Wrong again. I asked him how many police officers. There are now 1,300 fewer officers than at the election. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if the Home Secretary wants his job, but I do read that she's having conversations with Tony Blair because he's already given up on the Prime Minister. Why don't we talk about the Health Secretary? Let's see how he's doing. We do know he definitely wants the job. He said he'd end the doctor strikes. So can the Prime Minister tell the House how many appointments have been lost to strike action since last July?
Mr. Speaker, they left the NHS an absolute mess, with the highest waiting lists on record and the lowest confidence in the NHS ever. The Health Secretary said he would do 2 million extra appointments. He hasn't done 2 or 3 or 4. He's done 5 million extra appointments. That is because we invested in the NHS. What did they do? Having broken it, they voted against that investment. They should hang their heads in shame.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him how many appointments have been lost to strike action. He doesn't know. Let me tell him. We have lost 93,000 appointments to strikes since the Health Secretary gave doctors a massive pay rise. It's the truth. I know they wouldn't know the truth if it punched them in the face, but I'm telling them the truth. It is no wonder that we read this morning that the former Deputy Prime Minister has said about the Health Secretary she'd rather stick pins in her eyes than be on his golden ticket. And Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister congratulates himself on 5 million extra appointments. In our last year of office, we delivered 6.5 million extra appointments. Under Labour, Mr. Speaker, everything is getting worse. Jobs, bills, police numbers, teacher numbers, everything is getting worse. The Cabinet should be doing their own jobs. What are they doing? They're trying to compete for the caretaker's job. The only person who doesn't want the Prime Minister's job is the Chancellor. She's just trying to cling on to her own. Isn't it time, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister admits that Labour isn't working?
Mr. Speaker, she's living proof you can say whatever you like when nobody is listening to anything you have to say. There's absolutely no substance. She's no credibility on the economy. She still believes that Liz Truss was 100% right. She wants to go back to austerity with £47 billion of cuts. She thinks the minimum wage should be frozen too high. She's got no credibility on foreign policy. She complains about trade deals she tried to get and we got. She says that we should stay at home and not attend NATO or the G7. On issue after issue, she's clinging on to reform. That's not leadership, it's weakness. No wonder so many are leaving her party. They know there's absolutely no reason to stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, there you go. Prime Minister's questions live from the House of Commons. This is Talk. Mark Dolan in for Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is poorly but will return next week. We wish you well, Julia. And in the studio with me, reacting to PMQ's Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor, and Talk star, the brilliant Peter Cardwell. Peter, a points victory for Kemi Badenoch?
Yes, and the word of the day is wrong. She kept saying it, and it was really, really effective. I mean, maybe she should go into presenting a quiz show or something. It was really interesting because the lines and the attack lines that Keir Starmer had were rubbish. He talked about some nonsense about her being on the Liz Truss show and she's the Death Star. That went absolutely nowhere. Kemi Badenoch was absolutely in control there. I've criticised her on numerous occasions. I'm no sort of fangirl of Kemi Badenoch, but she's getting better and better every week. And she went through the rivals of the Prime Minister. She went through all those different issues that people really care about, the health service, how many teachers there are, how many police officers there are, the economy as well, and sort of wove in really skillfully, I thought, the problems with the fact that so many people see Keir Starmer as a very weak leader. So I think this was a very skillful Prime Minister's questions. I think Kemi Badenoch is in control. I think she's enjoying it as well. One person not enjoying it, Keir Starmer.
Has Kemi Badenoch come good too late, Claire?
No, it's not too late at all. I think she's now found the way that she works best. I think the team around her have finally given her the room to have a bit of personality when it comes to PMQs, because it previously was very, very textbook, keep with the same set of questioning, but now she's allowed to stretch that out, and she is very good. And I think we'll see the wrong T-shirts coming out on the Conservative
It'll
merch
be a meme in a few minutes' time.
Yeah. But she was very, very good. She's asking about those areas such as education. She knows the answer. She's formulated the question, and you can see that the Prime Minister just gets really, really tetchy, and he stands up really quickly to try and fire back and come up with an off-the-cuff quip. Doesn't work.
And her attack line seems to be based around the idea, Peter, that everything's getting worse. Yeah. She's looking at policing, education, crime, you name it, and she's saying that Labour's failing on all counts.
And the one that she didn't mention, and I thought she could have, but also she doesn't really need to, because everyone knows it's utter nonsense, is what Rachel Reeves has been saying about national insurance rises, those rises for employers to pay extra tax when they employ people. I mean, I know you've had people in your show, Mark, I've had loads of people ringing in my shows as well, saying, look, I run a small business, 99% of businesses in this country are 7 people or fewer, and I mean, I think it was just yesterday actually, I was speaking to someone who said they wanted to set up a new restaurant, pizza restaurant, would have employed 8 people. There would have been a £400,000 investment. It would have probably broke even in year 2. Sometimes these things take a while, obviously, with the investment. They said, actually, we cancelled that. We're not doing it anymore. Those are 8 jobs that don't exist anymore directly because of national insurance rises. Rachel Reeves says that's not the case. And when Keir Starmer stands up and says, oh, bills have gone down, energy bills have gone down by £150, maybe they have for some people, but for the vast majority of people out there who are paying their energy bills, everything is going up. It went up under the Tories, yes, I'm not saying that didn't happen, but it went up under Labour. Really interesting as well today from Kemi Badenoch. This is the first time that I've heard her defend the Conservatives' record. That was on extra appointments in the NHS. I found that quite interesting that she did that, because previously she hasn't really done that. And I think this is a more confident Kemi Badenoch. She's really socking it to Keir Starmer, and he's vulnerable. He's vulnerable in his own party.
Most definitely. Well, look, it was a very feisty session in the House of Commons, but speaking exclusively to our own Jeremy Kyle, here is what Kemi Badenoch had to say in a special interview with Jeremy about a potential Tory reform pact.
Would you, for the good of the country, get together with Farage and Reform to make sure we never have to deal with this shambles of a government ever again?
We owe it to the British people to make sure that we end this mess. But
I get that.
To spend more on benefits.
No, I get that. But would you not, in 3 years, to keep this lot out again, would you not say, I have to do right by the British people?
So that is what I can say. I will guarantee that I will do right by the British people. The best option is the agenda that the Conservatives have. Reform has a slightly different agenda. They say things, but they don't really understand. They don't do the work. They want more benefits. They're telling everybody everything. I'm not telling everybody whatever they want to hear. I'm being honest. And what I have said is that, local councils, you look for people who are going to deliver a Conservative agenda. That is what I promise people.
A fantastic interview from JK. He got a lot out of Kemi Badenoch, including an answer about whether Nigel Farage is a racist.
Do you fundamentally believe that Nigel Farage is a racist, Kemi Badenoch?
Well, he's never said anything racist to me, but a lot of people are coming out saying he did say those things. He should just apologise. If he just said, I was a kid, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, it was wrong, people shouldn't speak like that, this would all have gone away. And that's the problem. It's not that he's racist, that he doesn't care. And actually, I think as a serious politician, if you want to run the country, you should care about how the words you say impact people. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't say anything.
I'm sticking up for Nigel Farage because I'm happy to be here with you, but do we get to a point where, I'm going to say again, I'm 60, I can't bloody remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what I said 45 years ago.
What's interesting is it's not 1 or 2 people, they've got like 20, they've got 20 people, so it's a lot of people. Whether he remembers or not, he didn't deny it. He said, well, actually, he wasn't trying to hurt people. Nigel's a big boy. He should just stand up, put on his big boy pants and just say, do you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. The fact that he doesn't want to do that is a bit strange to me. That's what I would have done.
Head over to Talk and go to YouTube, Talk on YouTube, I should say, and you'll be able to hear back that fascinating interview between Jeremy Kyle and Kemi Badenoch. The issue, Claire Pearsall, is it doesn't matter how good Kemi Badenoch gets, her party is toast.
I disagree. I don't think the party is toast. I think there's an awful lot of work to do. People were milling around, not coming together because of the drubbing that we'd had at the election last year. But I think now she's giving them something to be excited about again. So I think once the party pulls together, actually, it's a hell of a lot stronger than people think.
This is the leader that people thought they were electing a year and a bit ago, isn't it? And the leader that they're finally getting. But is it too little too late, Peter?
I think she's got plenty of time until the next election, but I also think the march of reform is something that no Conservative leader has ever really properly dealt with before. Maybe in 2019, but yeah.
Nigel Farage has hoovered up market share in the last 12 months.
Absolutely correct.
On Kemi Badenoch's watch.
Yes, and she has been too weak. She needed to be much more front-footed. The kind of boldness needed to be there. She's also factually wrong in that interview where she says Nigel Farage didn't deny it. He has come out and said that he didn't say those things that he's accused of a number of years ago. It's important to clarify that point. But in terms of Kemi Badenoch, yes, I think she's found her mojo now. It'll be very interesting to see how people respond to that.
Most definitely, Peter. So good to see you. Back for Drive at 4?
Not today, but I'll be back on Friday for mid-morning at 10 o'clock.
Hardest working man in broadcasting. Brilliant, brilliant Peter Cardwell. And Claire's going to stay with me till 1, which I'm delighted about. Is Sir Keir Starmer a wicked man? That's next.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 12:24, Mark Dolan in for the fabulous Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm looking after breakfast tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I do hope you'll join me. That's going to be tomorrow, Friday and Saturday and Sunday. It'll be lovely to have your company. What about Keir Starmer? Is he a wicked man? Chris is in Hereford. Good morning, Chris, or good afternoon now, I should say. Hi, Chris.
Good afternoon. How are you? All right?
I'm very well indeed. Now, Roger Bolton, who's a very, very leading former BBC journalist, said that it was wrong that I described Sir Keir Starmer as a wicked liar. What do you think?
Well, to be honest, he is a liar, to be honest. And to be honest, I listened to the Prime Minister's question time just now. And to be honest, this excuse about the last government cocking it all up and basically they were all mistakes, he's swearing a bit thin now, to be honest. They've been in government for about 16 months now, is it?
Yeah, year and a half.
To be honest, it's just pathetic, to be honest. And I thought Kemi had a really good day today at the Prime Minister's questions.
Well, yes, she had a clear theme, didn't she, Chris, which is everything is worse.
Yeah. And the thing is, with West Street and the doctors, basically, he's in charge of the NHS and he should be sorting it out. And the thing is, giving the doctors all this money and everything, he's a person that's in charge, not the Conservatives, not nobody else. He is. So he needs to get off his bottom and sort the problems out.
Chris, I couldn't have put it better myself. Thank you for a brilliant call. Claire, I think the Conservatives are also rather feeble when it comes to defending their record. Peter Cardwell mentioned that this is the first time he's heard the Leader of the Opposition talk up something that the Conservatives did. And they're very reluctant, the Tories, to point out that there was a global pandemic in which they paid healthy people to stay at home for 2.5 years and shut the economy down. Yeah. And the invasion of Ukraine, which meant that this government had to subsidise our energy bills at a cost of around £50 billion. Why are the Tories not keen to defend their record more enthusiastically and to offer two reasonable excuses, which is a health crisis and a war?
I don't know. It's very, very strange.
Because it's valid.
It is absolutely valid. I mean, both of those things happened, especially when you look at the pandemic. Nobody knew what was going on and how to deal with it. And yeah, they made mistakes, but they also did a lot of good in saving a number of people, whether you agree with the pandemic planning or not. The fact is that they were in charge and some of the decisions were good. When it comes to looking backwards, I think the Conservatives always have this tendency to go to Thatcher. And I actually quite enjoy that. And Kemi Badenoch has re-established the Labour isn't working 1979 slogan.
Yes, it was old school, it was retro.
Absolutely retro, but it was perfect for the moment.
Most definitely. Mike is in Poole. And Mike, should we mandate masks to stop the spread of the latest strain of influenza?
Hello, Julia.
Hello. I've transitioned. It's a successful operation. By the way, you can't become Julia, sadly.
Right. Okay. No, I was being a bit contrary. I absolutely agree that a mask, particularly the surgical ones, cannot stop this tiny little virus. However, I do think there's lots of people now that are quite happy to cough and splutter and possibly carry the virus in their sneezes. Yeah. Whereas in the good old days, waving fingers around, we used to use tissues and handkerchiefs and didn't cough and splutter over the avocados. I think that's more of a problem, and it might make a difference if people wore masks.
So I think you raise a good point, Mike. I would say that when people sneeze, when they cough, they don't cover their mouths anymore. They don't use a hanky. And correct. Your argument is that if you had masks, it's a form of courtesy, actually. It might not stop the virus, but it's certainly going to stop droplets of spittle landing on your face when you're sat next to someone on an underground carriage.
Correct. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, that's it, Mike. Well, listen, it's all about balance, isn't it? I mean, do you own a mask?
Actually, no, I don't think I do now. I'm just looking in the car to see if I've got one I can put on, but no, I don't have one.
There you go. Well, listen, Mike, thank you for balancing that debate. It is all about opinions. Will you be wearing a mask in order to stop the spread of the influenza virus? 0344 499 1000. More to come. And what about this headline in the Daily Telegraph? Bardella, I will stop the boats, right? This is the hopeful for the presidential race in France in 2 years' time. He's ahead in the polls. He's basically France's Farage. So can he help to stop the boats? And could a dream team of Farage and this new French president eliminate illegal immigration across Europe? We'll get an expert response to that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
12:30, it's Talk Radio and radio and TV as well. My goodness, it's everything. You can listen to us on DAB+. You can also watch us. Just head to YouTube and search Talk and up we pop. On the masks, this from Sal. Mark, no point wearing a mask. They didn't do anything before, and it also causes hypoxia as you breathe in the carbon dioxide that you need to expel when you breathe out. They're useless and pointless. People like me who have asthma, it makes our breathing worse. I do remember during the course of the pandemic that it was a big problem for blind people as well, and for the deaf who like to lip read. Joanna in Salisbury. Mark, I think that Starmer is beyond evil. I think he has an agenda that he's working towards. We saw a year of planning the rhetoric for the budget. Now he sent Lammy and Lord Hermer out to Strasbourg to fix the problem of the far right in the EU by rescuing the ECHR treaty. He is cementing the UK into the ECHR so we can't get out of it. Like 12 years of fishing, signing up long 13-year contracts for incoming migrants. The list is growing so that whomever follows him, there is a stranglehold on the UK. Andy says, Mark, that had to be the weakest performance from a Prime Minister at Question Time I've ever seen. He was pathetic, says Andy. Elliot says Starmer has done nothing but lie about numerous things, as if we don't know, or only that I believe should be in prison. I think he has blood on his hands. He's worse than wicked. And Chris says, to be honest, too much to be honest. There you go. Kemi was a breath of fresh air, says Pauline. I like listening to her. Dictator Starmer nearly made me choke on my lunch when he said that she had no credibility. How can the man who has lost all credibility say that with a straight face? Nick in Bristol. No, Keir Starmer is not a wicked man. He's a wicked, wicked man. There you go. And somebody else said evil. Well, strong words, but you're entitled to your opinions. 0344 499 1000. A very interesting headline here in relation to illegal immigration. And Britain will be allowed to push small boats carrying migrants back into French waters under immigration plans put forward by Jordan Bardella, the man tipped to become France's next president. In an interview with The Telegraph, Mr. Bardella, the leader of the National Rally Party, said he would rewrite French border policy to help the UK tackle the migrant crisis in the Channel. So, will the next French president stop the boats? Let's get the views of Henry Bolton, Brexiteer and international border control expert. Hi, Henry.
Expert, not export.
We're not exporting you anyway. You're far too important for this country. Henry, what do you think about this? Are you hopeful that the next president might actually have some common sense and help stop the boats?
Yeah, indeed. That would be a very helpful move. The only thing, absolutely, full marks to him. He's recognising the problem and he's prepared to do something about it. And in the right way. If indeed he opened that door to us returning these people straight away, then absolutely fine. It would be even better if we didn't have to, because his own gendarmerie maritime, the sort of coast guard, if you like, of the French, were to stop these people in the first place. But he's certainly talking the right language. My fear, though, Mark, and I don't want to sort of throw cold water on the idea, is that he's talking about French domestic policy and perhaps legislation. But as we remember from the Brexit campaign, one of the reasons we wanted to leave the European Union was to reassert control over our borders. Not that we've done that, but to enable us to do it. And France has exactly the same problem because it is a member of the European Union. So the European Commission has a significant say over the policy that's enacted on the external borders of the European Union. So they may find that he's rubbing up against the European Commission. But France is a big power in Europe now. And yeah, I mean, absolutely support it. Yes, he could do it.
He wants to give the French national self-determination when it comes to policing their borders. Is that the beginning of the end of the EU project, Henry?
Not necessarily, no, because there's the two elements, aren't there? There's the Schengen area of free movement, and that links into, because if there's free movement within the union, then there has to be an external policy for the external borders of that Schengen area. But in addition, there's the European Customs Union. So that's about trade. The two things are separate. So from a trade perspective, no, it's not the end of the European Union. Perhaps we're increasingly seeing on... Have you lost me?
No, I'm all there. Hanging on your every word, Henry. Go on.
From a security point of view, the European Union is trying to have to cobble something together as the United States is withdrawing from support, very openly, in fact, withdrawing from support of European security in a practical way. And so there are a number of areas where actually there's a lot of people in Europe would argue to keep the European Union going. But on this particular issue, I think all member states, all of them, Hungary, Greece, Italy, France, the whole lot of them have got a problem with the way that the Schengen open border system is working, with a lack of security and effective management on their external borders, and the flow of criminality as a result. So they've all got that problem.
Whether it's France, Italy, Germany or Poland, Europe is shifting right, Henry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, and is it surprising? Ever since Angela Merkel opened her borders and her country to large numbers of Kurdish Turks or Turkish Kurds, or whichever way you want to put it, and Tony Blair opened up to Albanians after the war in Kosovo. The doors were opened, and now the naivety of that is being experienced by the populations across Europe. And they are therefore, quite rightly, quite understandably, quite democratically, putting extensive pressure on their governments to halt the process. And that's, left, right, centre. There are a lot of centrist parties who are saying exactly the same thing. In fact, some of the centrist parties, some of the social democrat parties across Europe, are actually very, very much of that ilk, particularly in the Scandinavian countries. So there's a lot of work being done, and I think, yeah, you can interpret it as moving right, or you can interpret it as populations demanding that their security is taken care of.
Meanwhile, before we let you go, Henry, Sir Keir Starmer has suffered a fresh rebellion over Brexit after 13 Labour MPs voted in favour of rejoining the EU customs union. Where do you see our relationship go with Europe in the remaining years of this Labour administration?
Well, they're going to increasingly try to go down that path. I think Keir Starmer knows that it would be probably electoral suicide to go the whole hog, but he's treading a sort of difficult political path within his own party. We've always known that there is a significant rejoiner element within the Labour Party. And who knows, after the next general election, I know you said during this government, but after the next general election, we might have a situation where we end up with a sort of an attempt to cobble together a coalition, Greens, Labour, whoever, Lib Dems, you never know. And that's going to be very much, if that happens, that would be a Remainer government or a rejoiner government. And the other thing, I mean, you talked about, just very briefly, the ECHR earlier and Keir Starmer's attempts to get the members or the signatories to the European Convention on Human Rights to amend that convention. Well, I argued that 4 or 5 years ago. I'm afraid the train has left the station on that. You've got 46 signatories, and having actually tried to negotiate amendments to international treaties, I can tell you that getting 46 countries to agree to open up that convention, agree to changes, even if they're all motivated to do so, will take you years. And in that time, the convention remains exactly as it is, and it will be an excuse for Starmer not to move out of it.
Henry, brilliant to see you. We'll catch up soon. Henry Bolton is a Brexiteer and international border control export. I've done it again. Expert. I was trying to not say export. We don't want to export him anywhere because we need people like Henry Bolton in the country. International border control expert. Briefly, before I get to Stephen Scunthorpe, your reaction to what Henry had to say, Claire?
It's really interesting when you look at what is happening across Europe, and I think that the Schengen zone causes the European Union so many more problems than it solves, and I think more countries are going to look now as to how they can best deal with that.
Yes, and if this chap, Bardella, wins the presidential elections, he'll be chipping away at the EU's powers over the French people to police their own borders. And I just wonder whether that is the beginning of the end for the project and it just becomes what it originally was supposed to be, which is a European Union.
I really hope so.
Sorry, an economic... What's happened to my brain today?
I don't know. I knew what you meant.
An economic union.
But I hope so. I really, really do, because I don't... Yeah, you know what? Let's get rid of all of the EU Commission. Let's dismantle it all. I mean, that's what I'm in favour of. Let's have those countries standing alone and actually trading as they see fit.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Claire, for that. So many messages coming in. Steve says, good afternoon, Mark. Starmer and his ilk are, in my opinion, despotic, using our democracy against us. He and they will go down in history infamously, not famously, as I suspect he thinks they will. They are a despicable government, which I cannot wait to see the back of. That is Steve. Another Steve is in Scunthorpe. He joins us now. Hi, good afternoon, Steve. Welcome to Talk.
I haven't got long to talk because I've got a customer, but
Oh gosh, okay. Well, where are you working?
Okay.
Who's your customer? What are you selling, Steve?
Guitars.
Oh, grubs. Okay.
Right.
Well, listen, I'll let you sell a guitar quickly. Is Keir Starmer wicked?
I think he's wicked. He could stop a lot of these girls being abused. It's in his power. And why is it the left have got control of the English dictionary? What does the meaning of scum mean?
Yes.
Why can they use these words, but we're not? I mean, it's even like these rallies they have, you know.
Scum is worse than wicked, isn't it? Is scum worse than wicked?
Well, I don't know. But it's their interpretation, isn't it? And I think it's wicked that he's allowing young girls to be brutalised, basically.
You're so right. Steve, listen, I don't want to prevent the sale of a guitar. Is it electric or acoustic?
It's an electric one.
Nice one. Well, look,
I don't know if I'm going to sell one, but parts for it.
Well, I hope you can. Steve, we don't want to impede your economic activity, but will you call me again when we've got more time? I'd love to speak to you again in the near future. Thank you for that, Steve, who says that Labour are quite happy to call their opponents scum, but we can't call Sir Keir Starmer wicked. Tarquin is in the capital, London. Hi, Tarquin. Is Sir Keir Starmer wicked?
He's worse than wicked. He's evil. Just wanted to praise you, commend you, Mark, on your way that you dealt with that condescending bully early on who tried to browbeat you into the way you shouldn't talk on the radio. Well done. He was called Roger somebody. I'd never heard of him.
Roger Bolton. Oh, thank you for that, Tarquin.
Yes. So keep it up. Don't ever let these people bully you. If you've got your opinion, you're allowed to say it. Ofcom rules say you can have an opinion. That's as you say. That's why you and Julia et al. are employed for that. You don't have to be. You're not the BBC with a license, with a bloody royal charter up your backside, are you? So just ignore Roger. He's a buffoon. Anyway, just a quick one on Kemi. I'm a bit worried about Kemi. I wasn't bringing up about that, but I think she's a bit performative. I'm a bit concerned that they're not substantive enough yet. She's doing quite well on the PR optics, but I think come the day, everyone's still going to pile in behind Nigel. That's my view on that. And yes, of course, Starmer's wicked. He's worse than wicked. He's on this agenda, as we all know what that is, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, he's pure evil. He's evil because he knows what he's doing. He's letting these rapists in on the south coast, and they're worried about men in green jackets. Oh, the Russians. I think the problem's a bit closer to home than that, Mark, don't you?
Well, yes, I mean, I think Tarquin, stay with us. I think that we're entitled, Claire Pearsall, to offer a moral judgment on a politician whose policies are harming the interests of and potentially endangering our citizens.
Yeah, see, when you put yourself up for election and you get put into office, then you expect people to scrutinise what you say and what you do. And if you are harming the British economy, people feel unhappy, then they should be allowed to voice that. And I think Tarquin was right with what he said is, you know, are we going to have a dictionary that we're allowed to use? Are there things that we'll be allowed to say or not compared to, you know, what Starmer believes?
Well, definitely. You get the last word on this, Tarquin. I mean, do we have to worry about language in politics? Some people argue that the reason why Donald Trump faced mortal peril on 2 occasions in the run-up to the presidential elections was because people were calling him a fascist. So am I guilty, therefore, of double standards with labelling Starmer wicked?
No, because yours is based on fact and that is based on conjecture. Fascist is clearly factually incorrect, whereas yours is just a basic sort of subjective opinion. So how can you be, or you can't be wrong, whereas other people says, you know, it's clearly nothing to do with Mussolini or anything like that. It's really pathetic, isn't it, Claire?
Tarquin, if I wind up in court, you're going to be my character witness and lead advocate.
God bless you.
Well, God bless you. Thank you, Tarquin. Listen, a brilliant call. 12:44. More to come. What about this? Women and girls are being sexually assaulted in mixed changing rooms across the country. New police data shows that at least 16 rapes, 80 sexual assaults and 65 acts of voyeurism were committed in sports centres in 2023, equating to 3 offences a week. Campaigners have warned that mixed sex changing areas are a magnet for sexual predators. It's all because of trans ideology, and we'll get reaction to that next.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a shocking development at 12:47 in the afternoon. Women and girls are being sexually assaulted in mixed changing rooms across the country. New police data shows that at least 16 rapes, 80 sexual assaults and 65 acts of voyeurism were committed in sports centres in 2023. equating to 3 offences a week. This is all because of mixed-sex changing areas. Let's get reaction now from a hero of mine, Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and author of Trans, Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
It's lovely to meet you for the first time. I believe it's our first interview. The reason why this is happening is because of trans ideology. It's the idea that really sex is a fluid idea, it's very abstract, and that somebody that has a male physiology is entitled to use a female space. That's why this is happening.
Yes, that, and also that sex differences are trivial and that women don't need any special protections from men, that it's, that women can commit crime too, that, women and men are equally strong, equally violent, equally prone to crime, all these obviously flatly factually incorrect statements. So if you know that you're going to have men who want to come into the women's changing rooms, the easiest way to solve that from the point of view of the person running it is just not to have any women's changing rooms. But also you don't do the sort of risk assessment that you should unless you are clear-eyed on what are actual sex differences. So men are much stronger than women. Men commit nearly all sexual crimes. Women are overwhelmingly the victims. That is why we have separate sex spaces in the first place. That, together with dignity and privacy, people prefer to be with people only of their own sex. And yet, all over the country, places like swimming pools are going mixed sex instead.
And what they're doing, this is a political fudge, isn't it, in order to try to keep everyone happy. And as usual, the people that suffer are women.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we're talking about is those sort of changing village things, and it's important that you do have some of those at a swimming pool because you get families going. So they're places that people can bring in a child of the opposite sex, or both parents can go in with their kids. But they're flimsy, they don't have floor-to-ceiling doors. They're obviously, if a lock doesn't work or something, the door opens into a mixed-sex communal space. And very importantly, they're very convenient for people who want to slide a mobile phone under a door or under a barrier between two of the cubicles, or to go in and to place a camera. I mean, one of the cases that the Women's Rights Network, who did this research, excellent organisation of grassroots feminists, one of the cases they highlight is a man who, when he was found committing voyeurism, there were 7,000 images of girls, young girls, on his phone that he had got in similar places. So, of course, it's a small minority of men, but those men can commit really large amounts of crime, and they make women feel unsafe. And just knowing that a man might be in the cubicle next to you makes you feel unsafe, so women won't go to these places. That's what happens when we design safety out of public spaces. Women just silently don't go.
They don't go, and of course others that won't go are those of a deep religious faith who will find it more difficult to use a mixed sex changing area because of their beliefs.
Yes, I mean, I don't know how people can do equality impact assessments and come up with this as an answer, because you're meant to think hard about things like different religions, both sexes, and the fact that it's women who do most of the care work supporting other people, like, for example, an elderly mother. It's likely to be a woman who wants to bring her swimming. The fact that women and girls give up sport more than boys do, there are more barriers to participation. It's a stated goal of the government to keep girls, teenage girls, because that's when girls drop out, in swimming. And that's exactly when girls are super self-conscious about their bodies, and exactly when the sort of pervy men who we're talking about here start perving on them. So specifically, we should be thinking about what makes those girls feel the most safe, secure, comfortable. Things like single-sex sessions for swimming, but definitely single-sex spaces, exactly when you're so self-conscious about your growing body and you're maybe worrying about dealing with periods for the first time. I mean, really, it's unconscionable that in order to placate a small fringe bunch of ideologues, that half of humanity is being thrown under the bus like this.
Stay with us if you can, Helen Joyce. With me in the studio is Claire Pearsall, a former Conservative government advisor. And what we're hearing from Helen and from this research, Claire, is that mixed sex changing areas are undignified, uncomfortable and dangerous.
Absolutely, and I think Helen hits the nail on the head, especially when you're looking at the uptake or longevity of sport for teenage girls. Now, I've been a teenage girl. Admittedly, it was a long time ago.
I would say a decade by the looks of it.
I love you for that. It's not true. I would have been extremely uncomfortable in a mixed-sex changing space. I was really self-conscious about how I looked, how I was dressed, what my hair looked like, and it would have just completely freaked me out. So I would never have gone swimming or played sport, which I absolutely adored. So I was quite pleased that my school, for example, had single-sex changing rooms. The local leisure centre also did, and I took up a sport that was a mixed sport anyway, so, you know, we were all good. But I think we need to be really mindful of the rights of women are being eroded, and it's just happening. Little chips are being taken, no one's really noticing, and no one's standing up for us apart from the likes of Sharon Davis. You've got Helen Joyce and Sex Matters, who are excellent. Women need to be aware, and they need to be very, very unhappy.
Most definitely. And Helen, let's call a spade a spade. Going back to religion or cultural sensitivities, it's unlikely that many British Muslim women will use a mixed sex changing area. That's just a provable fact, and that's egregiously wrong.
I mean, exactly. Orthodox Jewish women as well. About a quarter of women have had a serious impact from sexual violence of some sort. Women like that are much more likely to feel even more uncomfortable and scared in such spaces. You know, there's all sorts of reasons. A woman who has a health issue, or a woman who, for example, has had a mastectomy or something like that and may need some extra privacy when she's changing. And people tend to say, oh, well, there are cubicles. But, you know, cubicles don't feel as safe when you know that there's a man on the other side of the wall, and also you always worry about the door.
And I can say some things, Helen, I can say some things that you can't say, which is that men and their etiquette in the bathroom is horrific and abysmal and awful. You know, men make a mess in the bathroom, okay? The gents' toilets are always, you know, a disaster. Why women should be put through that. And you've also got the spectacle of, you know, a bloke coming out of a cubicle in a mixed sex bathroom, Helen, doing up his flies. I mean, all of this is completely unacceptable.
I mean, I travel by train, and sometimes I travel by train late at night, and I try to stay away from the toilets on those trains because, as you say, men are still doing up their flies as they're coming out. You know, anybody who has any common sense or any observation or any compassion for other human beings or any awareness of human nature would know that you design that extra step of safety in. This is what safeguarding is about. You design safety in. And it's not just about the rapes and the voyeuristic attacks that are reported to the police, though they're very important, and well done to Women's Rights Network for this information, information campaign to get these figures. It's just also about the feeling of safety. You don't go to places that you feel unsafe. Women don't walk in parks at night when it's dark. We know where there are lights and where there aren't. A place that's mixed sex and you have to take off all your clothes and have a shower is not a safe place for women. It feels bad and women won't go.
And if you take, for example, I don't know, a social setting like a restaurant or a bar or a nightclub, women quite often support each other in the bathroom. It's a haven.
Yeah, and in nightclubs and in bars, of course, there's drink and it's dark and there are actually predators. OK, a swimming pool isn't going to have the drink and the dark bit, but there are predators. We know that. We know where men who want to take pictures of women undressed go. They go to places where there are mixed sex changing rooms, where no one is going to question anything if they go in, where they can leave hidden cameras. I mean, hidden cameras are an absolute blight, and the government has said so, and it has said that this is a crime that men commit largely against women and girls, and yet at the same time we're making that crime easier for those men to commit. It's really a predator's charter. And Sport England is supporting and saying that it's good to have mixed sex changing rooms. They should be telling people don't have this.
It's unforgivable. I do hope we speak again soon, Helen. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Helen Joyce is the Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, author of Trans, Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Will you be wearing a face mask to stop the spread of this nasty strain of influenza? Harry's in Portsmouth. Hi, Harry. Now, we're just connecting to Harry in just a moment because, of course, there is advice from the authorities to wear a mask when you are in a public setting. Someone that will never be masked or muzzled is Ian Collins, who's live at 1. Good afternoon. I mustn't say good morning. I've done a lot of earlies lately.
You say that, but I've got the itches where the mask has just come off, because obviously... and you know, the proof is that nobody else in the newsroom out there has got flu.
Oh, it's a miracle.
I mean, I haven't got it either. So it must have worked, right?
Well, the thing
that's what the science says.
Apparently so. You have the immune system of an ox. Nothing's going to take you down, Ian Collins.
Oh, really? Yeah, absolutely. Never even had a flu jab. Never.
right?
Yeah, it's just one of those things, you know. When you look like this and you're this kind of. Why is Claire laughing at me?
No, it's the Seven Oaks fresh air. That's
exactly what it is. Yeah, you are kind of gifted. You know, when the Messiah plonked me in that particular town, I realised full immunity was granted. With my residency.
Oh, what are you going to do? I tell you something, you've got plenty to go up next.
We have as well. Keir Starmer solving the immigration problem with his ECHR shenanigans. You know, we thought Keir couldn't do it, but he's only gone and done it. So
who knew?
No more boats.
Well, that's it. This is that gaslighting term is used a lot. Have you seen Rachel Reeves now? She's been complaining about all the speculation in regards to the budget. Apparently, that was someone else's fault, not hers.
The speculation was somebody else's fault. Hang on, what's her job title now? Hang on, what is it? It's the Chancellor of not the Lancaster, not Duchy of Cornwall. That's it. Of the Exchequer. That's in Germany. Yeah, she'd love that. Nothing to do with her. Nothing to do with me, Gov. Is that what she's saying?
Yeah, that's what she's saying. But not just that. She's complaining about the leaks and complaining about the speculation in the run-up to the election.
Well, she should speak to the people that work for her, surely. That would be your first port of call. There's only a handful of people, you know this, Claire, in certain meetings, for your eyes only and all that caper. Sign on the dotted line, otherwise you go to jail for 100 years. She knows. She knows.
She's going to be really angry.
But here's a question, right? I want to know what Ian Collins thinks. Do you think change is coming? Because if you look at France, Germany, Italy, Poland, it's all shifting right. The next president of France reckons he's going to stop the boats on our behalf.